Hi, welcome to a new episode of the true crime story that shocked the world. This is not a tale of fiction, it's the chilling real story of how a soft, steady voice on the radio uncovered a terrifying network of corruption and how that voice was silenced in the most brutal way possible. It begins in Chicago, Illinois, a city that knows crime like an old neighbor, but nothing could have prepared it for what happened in the winter of 2017. On the cold night of January 12, 2017, while most of the city lay beneath a quiet blanket of snow, something horrifying unfolded inside Studio 9B at WCBX 103.3 FM, a small radio station nestled in the downtown area. Elena Rivera, a 35-year-old radio host known for her calm and comforting voice, was in the middle of her nightly broadcast, Voices in the Dark. It was her 7th year behind the mic. Listeners knew her as a steady companion in the loneliest hours. She spoke with sincerity, gave advice, listened without judgment. She wasn't a celebrity, but to many people across the Midwest who tuned in at midnight, she was a lifeline. That night started like any other. Elena's voice drifted through speakers across truck cabs, nursing homes, and dark bedrooms. "Good evening, it's 12:01, she said. "This is Elena. I'm with you through the dark." She took a few calls, played some quiet jazz in the background, and talked about memories of her childhood on the south side of Chicago. Her voice was soft, measured, familiar. At 12:47 a.m., something unusual happened. Listeners heard a long silence, followed by a muffled thud, then the sound of a chair scraping. For several seconds, the only noise was low background static. Then, nothing. The line went dead. Tom Lacey, a 64-year-old retired mechanic and a regular caller from Joliet, was among the first to call the station's emergency line. "I don't know what happened," he told the night receptionist. "Something wasn't right. It didn't sound like a mistake. It sounded like something happened to her." Claire Newton, the station's manager who lived nearby, rushed to the building. She arrived within 20 minutes, unlocked the door to Studio 9B, and found Elena slumped forward on the desk, lifeless. The cord of her studio microphone was wrapped tightly around her neck. Her eyes were closed. Her coffee sat half full beside her hand. The on-air light above the glass window still glowed red. Police arrived quickly. The scene was strangely sterile. There were no signs of a break-in. No signs of a struggle. Nothing had been taken. Her handbag was still zipped, her phone untouched. Her body showed no defensive wounds. It looked as if whoever killed her had done it calmly, precisely, and had left without a trace. One detail stood out. A guest pass had been signed out at the front desk earlier that night. The name written was Isaac Carr. No one at the station knew that name. Elena hadn't scheduled any interviews that night, and the studio log showed no appointments. As detectives looked deeper, that name began to sound familiar. Claire, the manager, recalled an unusual interview Elena had done about 6 months earlier. It wasn't advertised. It aired late on a Thursday and was removed from the station's archives just a few days after. The guest that night had gone by the name Isaac. He had asked Elena to keep his identity hidden. His voice was altered, and the details were vague, but the content of the interview was unforgettable. Isaac had claimed to be a former Chicago police officer. He spoke about a hidden group of ex-cops who no longer wore badges but still held power. According to him, they were running illegal protection rackets, offering security to powerful people with criminal ties. They silenced witnesses, moved dirty money, and, if necessary, made people disappear. The network, he said, included former lieutenants, detectives, even retired captains. Elena asked him if he was afraid. "Yeah," he said, "but people should know." After that night, Elena never mentioned him again. The episode had gained traction online. It was uploaded to podcast apps and shared on YouTube. It quickly became the station's most downloaded show, though it was soon taken down, without explanation. Elena never said why. She kept quiet, but those close to her noticed she had changed. She had grown more guarded. She spent more time alone at the studio, often staying hours after her show ended. She stopped taking personal calls during work hours and started carrying a leather-bound notebook with her everywhere. No one knew what was in it. Even her brother, Carlos Rivera, Didn't know. He was 38, a public defender who worked long hours at the courthouse on South State Street. They were close, had always been. Carlos often tuned into her show in the background while preparing case files. He called her the voice with a spine, but when he last saw her 2 weeks before her death, she seemed nervous, distracted. She had joked, half serious, that she was sitting on a story too big to touch. The investigation led police to uncover the identity behind the fake name. Isaac Carr was actually Gregory Maddox, 42 years old, a former Chicago PD officer who had abruptly resigned in 2013. After leaving the force, he started a private security firm that mostly worked under-the-table gigs for local businesses and property developers. His departure had been quiet, no press, no drama. But now his name was back, tied to a murder. Police went to Greg's apartment in Bronzeville. It looked untouched. His keys were on the table, his wallet inside a drawer. His phone was powered off. But taped above his desk was a printed photo of Elena Rivera, taken from the station's website. He was gone. Missing. No one had seen him since the day after Elena's death. Then, as detectives began to dig into Greg's past, they discovered something even more troubling. His security firm had received several large cash transfers from a now-defunct account under the name LB Protection Services. The initials meant nothing at first. But then an officer recognized them. LB, he said. That used to be Captain Leo Barnes' unit back in the day. Captain Leo Barnes, now 54, had retired in 2014. Highly respected. Quite. A war vet turned decorated cop who once led a team in the city's toughest districts. After retiring, he opened a private firm in the suburbs. No criminal record. No reason to suspect anything, until now. At this point, Elena Rivera was dead. Greg Maddox had vanished. And an old name from the department was quietly rising to the surface. What Elena had stumbled upon wasn't just a corrupt man or a dirty cop. It was something more hidden, more organized, and far more dangerous than anyone was prepared to admit. The notebook was thick, its leather cover worn at the edges. Inside, the handwriting was neat, deliberate. Names, places, phone numbers, and short descriptions filled every page. It wasn't just a list. It was a map. Every arrow, underline, and scribbled margin note pointed to something larger. Carlos Rivera sat at his sister's desk, reading through it in silence, knowing she had died for what was written here. Detective Dana Morales leaned over his shoulder. "You said she scanned this?" Carlos nodded. "She backed it up to her email. She told me once, like a joke, 'If I disappear, you'll know why.' I didn't laugh at the time. Now I wish I had listened harder." Dana took the scans and had them printed and organized. The department's analysts began cross-referencing every name Elena had written down. Within 2 days, they found 3 cases that had never been connected. Cases ruled as overdoses, a robbery gone wrong, and a supposed fall from a fire escape. But all 3 had strange details, and all 3 victims had, at some point, filed complaints or lawsuits against former police officers, men who had once worked under Captain Leo Barnes. At the same time, Greg Maddox's body was found in a deserted warehouse in Little Village. The building had been abandoned for years. His body was left beneath a rusted staircase, already starting to decompose. No ID, no phone. Only the serial number on his dental implants confirmed who he was. The medical examiner's report showed signs of torture. He had been restrained, burned, beaten, and finally shot in the head. It was clear, this wasn't random. Someone had silenced him. Detective Morales was tired. She had seen a lot in her 18 years with the department, but something about this case disturbed her more than usual. It wasn't just the murder. It was the quietness around it. No one inside the department wanted to talk about Barnes. Old colleagues shut their doors. Files went missing. Phone calls were returned late, if at all. She knew the signs. Something big was being protected. She kept her team small, only 2 other detectives and 1 analyst. The fewer people involved, the safer the work would be. Every lead from Elena's notes was treated like a thread, carefully pulled to see where it would lead. The deeper they looked, the more they found. Barnes had left the force with full honors. A clean record. His retirement party had been attended by city officials, judges, and senior officers. After that, he opened a security firm, Barnes Risk Consulting, in a quiet suburb outside the city. It looked legit. But the firm had no website, no public contracts, and no obvious employees. Payments were made in cash. Surveillance showed almost no activity at the office. Morales sent someone in undercover. A young officer named Adam, posing as a former Marine looking for private security work. He came back shaken. He hadn't met Barnes directly, but a man who called himself Coop had interviewed him, asked strange questions, nothing about qualifications or experience, but about loyalty, keeping quiet, and handling pressure. While that was happening, Carlos handed over the audio recordings Elena had saved. The files were protected by a password only she and Carlos knew, a phrase from their childhood. When the files were opened, 23 recordings were revealed. Some were phone calls. Others were interviews. All of them were disturbing. In one recording, Greg's voice was clear. He sounded exhausted, like a man who hadn't slept in days. "You don't understand," he told Elena. "They don't care about rules. Barnes has people everywhere. Cops, ex-cops, lawyers, even someone in internal affairs. If you cross them, they erase you." Another voice, unidentified, said something chilling in a later clip. "You think this is about money? It's control. It's always been control. If you control the people who enforce the rules, you don't need to follow them." One of the last recordings was only 30 seconds long. Elena was whispering, almost too quietly to hear. "I know what I've found. I can't run. I'm going to say it, on air, if anything happens to me, it's not an accident." Detective Morales requested protection for Carlos. She knew the people Elena had exposed were still out there. They had already killed twice. They would do it again. She also made the choice to bring in the FBI. The local case had grown into something bigger. Federal agents were briefed on the evidence, and a joint task force was formed. Their job was to investigate Barnes Risk Consulting and its possible links to organized crime and murder. Still, no one could find Barnes. His office was empty. His home in Naperville had been vacated weeks earlier. Neighbors said he had left on vacation. His car was gone. His phone disconnected. But one mistake led investigators to him. A wire transfer, small, just under $5,000, was traced from one of the shell accounts Greg had mentioned to a private storage unit in Joliet. When they raided the unit, they found burner phones, documents, fake IDs, and several sets of security uniforms stitched with a fake company logo. In a hidden compartment inside a file cabinet, there were dozens of surveillance photos, taken from rooftops, alleys, and parked cars. Most of the photos were of people with criminal records. But 3 were not. One was of Carlos. One was of Detective Morales. And the last was of Elena, taken weeks before her death, leaving the radio station at night. The warehouse was dark, cold, and smelled like rust and oil. Federal agents and local detectives moved quietly, scanning everything. It was the second unit they had searched that day, but this one was different. Hidden behind a stack of crates in the back corner was a locked metal cabinet. Inside were burner phones, several envelopes of cash, and folders marked with false business names. Most disturbing of all were the surveillance photographs, dozens of them. Some showed known criminals. Others were pictures of people who had no known ties to crime at all. Elena Rivera was in 5 of them. 2 were taken outside the radio station. One was of her walking alone at night, looking over her shoulder. One was through her apartment window. And the final one, she was in her studio, live on air. The photos confirmed everything investigators had feared. She hadn't been a random victim. She had been watched, followed, and targeted. Detective Dana Morales studied the photos silently. One image showed Carlos Rivera in front of the courthouse. Another was of Dana herself, taken from a distance as she walked to her car. She felt her chest tighten. This was bigger than anything she had dealt with. These people weren't just hiding, they were prepared to eliminate threats. The task force decided to act fast. They began watching the families and known associates of Leo Barnes. A name from Elena's notebook, Thomas Keene, appeared again in the storage files. He was a former sergeant, retired in 2011, and now ran a trucking company in the outskirts of Chicago. Keene had no criminal record but had been involved in multiple internal investigations that mysteriously went nowhere. A hidden microphone was placed in his office under the pretense of a routine fire inspection. Within a week, agents recorded him saying the name, Barnes, multiple times, along with a phrase that raised alarms. She should have kept her mouth shut. But now everyone's scrambling. A federal warrant was issued, and Keene was taken in for questioning. He asked for a lawyer, said nothing. But when agents searched his office and home, they found a hard drive that had been hidden behind a loose panel in his basement wall. It was encrypted, but after several days, technicians cracked it. Inside were audio files, recordings of conversations, many of them recent. One stood out. The voice of Leo Barnes. "We take care of the leak first," he said. "Then the backup. She's got notes? Fine. Burn the source. If Rivera thinks she can put that on the air, we make sure she never speaks again." The tone was calm. Precise. No emotion. That was all the task force needed. By late June 2017, a federal indictment was approved. 4 men were named: Leo Barnes, Thomas Keene, and 2 other former officers, Raymond Ellis and Joel Porter. They were charged with conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and involvement in the murders of Elena Rivera and Gregory Maddox. Arrest warrants were issued across the state. Keene and Ellis were caught within 48 hours. Porter was found in Michigan, staying with a cousin. But Barnes was still missing. He had gone completely off the grid. No phone, no bank activity, no digital trace. Agents began digging through his past in greater detail. They contacted old colleagues, friends, and even his ex-wife, who admitted she hadn't seen him in over a year. She did, however, remember something strange. Just months before Elena's death, Barnes had taken a trip to northern Wisconsin. He had mentioned buying a cabin, just in case. That lead brought agents to a remote, wooded area near the Chequamegon National Forest. After 3 days of searching, they found it. The cabin looked abandoned, but fresh tire tracks and recent footprints told a different story. A tactical team moved in at dawn. Inside, they found Leo Barnes sitting at a kitchen table, drinking black coffee. He didn't resist. He didn't say a word. He simply looked up, nodded once, and placed his hands on the table. Back in Chicago, news of his arrest spread fast. Media outlets had already begun speculating about the case. When the federal documents were made public, they revealed a terrifying picture: a private network of former officers who had used their past positions and connections to act as a secret enforcement group. They had operated outside the law, targeting people who threatened to expose them or interfere with their money. Elena Rivera had become one of those threats. Her interview with Greg Maddox wasn't just journalism. It was the first real crack in the system. She had followed the trail on her own, gathering names and records, interviewing people at risk to herself. When she started planning a special episode to reveal it all, they decided to silence her. Prosecutors built the case carefully. Every file, every recording Elena had saved became central evidence. Her brother Carlos testified before a federal grand jury. Detective Morales provided a full breakdown of the evidence chain, from Elena's notebook to Greg's interview to the files found in the storage units. The story became national news. People who had once trusted Barnes and his men as law enforcement now saw them for what they were: criminals hiding behind badges. What shocked the public the most was how carefully everything had been done. There were no outbursts, no flashy violence, just quiet control and fear. They chose victims who wouldn't be missed or who could be framed. They used their knowledge of procedure and loopholes to cover their tracks. If not for Elena, they might never have been caught. She had done what few dared to do: shine a light on the dark places no one else would look. The courtroom was packed on the first day of the pretrial hearings. Federal agents sat alongside journalists. Carlos sat in the front row, clutching the same notebook his sister once carried. When the judge asked Barnes to confirm his identity, he stood and answered simply, "Yes, I'm Leo Barnes." It was the first and last time he would speak in open court. The trial date was set. And behind the silence of every document, every recording, was one undeniable truth. Elena had spoken, and the world had finally heard her. The courtroom was quiet when the trial began on September 14, 2019. No cameras were allowed inside, but reporters filled the benches, scribbling notes as the opening statements unfolded. Elena Rivera's name was the first spoken by the prosecution. Her image, radiant, mid-laugh, from her WCBX staff photo, was displayed on the large screen. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Melanie Hooper, stood in front of the jury and spoke in a steady voice. She was a voice for the voiceless, she said. She didn't have a badge, but she uncovered something that others spent years avoiding. And for that, they killed her. Across the room, Leo Barnes sat in a gray suit, his face expressionless. He had pleaded not guilty to all charges: first-degree murder, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and racketeering. The government had built the case over 2 years, combining files from the Chicago Police Department, FBI, and Department of Justice. They had more than enough. The jury heard about the secret recordings, including Greg Maddox's final call with Elena. They listened to the chilling clip where Barnes said, "She thinks she can say whatever she wants. We'll take care of it." Forensic analysts confirmed the voice was his. They played the 30-second whisper from Elena's final recording, the one she saved for Carlos. Her voice barely audible. "If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. It's real. Everything." Witness after witness painted the full picture. Carlos Rivera took the stand for 2 hours. He recounted the moment he opened Elena's backup email and found the notebook scans. He spoke slowly, his voice thick with emotion. "She didn't do it for money or attention," he said. "She just wanted the truth out there. She wanted people to be safe." The prosecution revealed how Barnes had used his retirement as a shield. He formed Barnes Risk Consulting as a cover. Behind it was a hidden network of former cops who used their old contacts, databases, and knowledge of police systems to act as a secret enforcement arm for illegal businesses, drug dealers, and white-collar criminals. They intimidated witnesses, threatened lawyers, and made people disappear. They didn't operate like gangsters. They operated like professionals. The murders of Elena Rivera and Greg Maddox were planned, not impulsive, not acts of panic. When Elena started preparing a special episode to expose what she'd learned, Greg warned her to stop. She refused. That night in the studio, Barnes sent someone in through the service entrance, someone with a stolen guest badge. The cord that had delivered her voice to thousands became the weapon that ended her life. Then came the cover-up. After Elena's death, Barnes moved quickly. He ordered Greg's abduction. Greg was taken from his apartment, interrogated, tortured, and killed. His body was dumped in a warehouse, left to rot. They cleaned up afterward. Removed records, burned notes, disconnected phones. But Elena had been smarter than anyone expected. She had created backups. She had emailed her brother. And she had recorded everything. The defense tried to argue the recordings were circumstantial. They claimed Greg Maddox was mentally unstable, that Barnes had no proven connection to the killings. But it didn't hold. The evidence was too solid, the timeline too clear, and the voice on the tapes, calm, confident, unapologetic, was unmistakable. In the back row of the courtroom, Detective Dana Morales sat in silence every day. She had been there from the start, following Elena's notes when no one else believed they mattered. She knew this wasn't just about one bad cop. This was about a system that had turned a blind eye for too long. Elena had cracked it open with nothing more than curiosity, a voice, and a microphone. By October 10th, after weeks of testimony, closing arguments were made. The jury deliberated for just 5 hours. The courtroom stood still when they returned. The foreperson, a middle-aged woman in a green blouse, didn't hesitate. "We find the defendant, Leo Barnes, guilty on all counts." A ripple of emotion moved through the room. Carlos closed his eyes. Dana looked straight ahead. Barnes sat down slowly, still without showing any emotion. The sentence came the next day, life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. In the weeks that followed, the 3 other men connected to the case, Thomas Keene, Joel Porter, and Raymond Ellis, pleaded guilty and received sentences ranging from 30 years to life, depending on their roles. With their cooperation, more arrests followed. Names from Elena's notebook were investigated, retired officers were questioned, and a deeper network was uncovered. It was the beginning of a slow cleanup process that the city badly needed. At WCBX 103.3 FM, Studio 9B remained closed for almost a year. The microphone Elena used was placed in a glass case, along with a plaque that read, "She spoke the truth. They tried to silence her. But we still hear her." Carlos returned to work, but he now used part of his time to help train legal teams on identifying hidden corruption. Dana Morales was promoted to lieutenant and led a new internal task force focused on misconduct and cover-ups. And across Chicago, people remembered Elena not just as a voice on the radio, but as someone who stood up when it counted most. On January 12, 2020, exactly 3 years after her death, a memorial was held at the station. Former callers, co-workers, and friends gathered. Some drove from neighboring states. A recording of her last full show played softly in the background. People cried. People smiled. People remembered. In the end, Elena Rivera had done what many could not. She had broken a story that others were too afraid to touch. She had paid the ultimate price, but her words, her voice, lived on. In the courtroom, in the news, in the whispers of late-night listeners who would never forget the woman who talked them through the dark. Justice had come, not quickly, not easily, but fully. Because one woman refused to stay silent. Because she believed the truth mattered. And because even in her final moments, she chose to speak. And the world finally listened. In this episode, we delve into a gripping case where a stepson's hidden affair spiraled into an obsession, culminating in a grisly murder. Let's explore the details. Maria Rodarte Sullivan, a vibrant 38-year-old, was renowned for her artistic flair and generous heart. Living in the charming town of Summerville, South Carolina, known for its picturesque downtown and the annual Flower Town Festival, Maria was a beloved figure. As a freelance artist, she crafted stunning paintings and sculptures, which she showcased and sold at local art fairs and galleries. Maria shared her life with her husband, David Sullivan, and his 18-year-old son, Tyler. David, a retired naval officer, had been married to Maria for a decade. Despite their 20-year age difference, their love for each other was evident. They first met at an art show featuring Maria's work, where David was captivated by her creativity and zest for life. Maria strived to create a warm and loving home. Balancing her art career with household duties and caring for Tyler, she took on a motherly role, especially after the loss of Tyler's biological mother a few years prior. Although their relationship was strained, Maria hoped they would eventually bond. Outside of her artistic pursuits, Maria was passionate about reading and gardening. She adored classic literature, often quoting Jane Austen and the Bronte sisters. Her garden was a riot of colors, reflecting her love for nature. Maria was also deeply involved in her community, volunteering at the Somerville Public Library and participating in neighborhood events. In the days leading up to her tragic death, Maria was excited about a new project, a series of sculptures inspired by South Carolina's wildlife and landscapes. She planned to unveil these at the upcoming Flower Town Festival and was also looking forward to a small family getaway aimed at mending her relationship with Tyler. Described by friends as charismatic and warm-hearted, Maria was known for hosting dinner parties, creating a welcoming atmosphere with her delicious cooking. Despite life's challenges, she remained optimistic and dreamed of opening her own art gallery one day. Her untimely death was a severe blow to all who knew her, cutting short her vibrant life. On the morning of September 12, 2012, Somerville was just waking up. The day was cool and clear, with the sun shining brightly. Around 8:30 a.m., Maria's neighbor, Lilith Carter, 25, walked over to the Sullivan house. Lilith, who was working on a true crime novel based on real events, often visited Maria for discussions. Finding it unusual that Maria was not answering her door, Lilith decided to check the art studio in the backyard. As she approached, Lilith noticed the studio door was ajar. Upon entering, she was met with a horrific sight: Maria lying on the floor, covered in blood. The room was in disarray, with broken sculptures and shattered glass scattered everywhere. The scene showed clear signs of a violent struggle. Horrified, Lilith's hands trembled as she quickly dialed 911. The operator guided her to stay outside and wait for the police. Still in shock, Lilith complied and stood in the yard, trying to process the horrifying scene she had just witnessed. The police arrived swiftly. As they began their investigation, they observed a heavy sculpture near Maria's body, clearly used as the murder weapon. The blood-soaked room and the chaotic state of the studio suggested a frenzied and brutal attack. The detectives noted the severity of the violence and began collecting evidence. Detectives Martin Coco and Julia Montez, seasoned investigators known for their meticulous work, led the team. The crime scene was a grim sight: blood smeared on the walls, and broken sculptures and glass strewn across the floor. Maria's body lay amidst the wreckage, showing signs of severe blunt force trauma. The detectives immediately began their investigation, securing the area to preserve evidence. They utilized advanced forensic techniques, including fingerprint dusting and blood pattern analysis, to piece together the events leading up to the murder. They collected blood and hair samples for DNA analysis and photographed the scene from every angle. A torn piece of cloth and a broken piece of jewelry were also recovered as potential evidence. As the day progressed, the neighborhood was abuzz with a mix of fear and curiosity. The police conducted door-to-door interviews and asked anyone who had seen or heard anything unusual to come forward. Additional officers arrived to aid in the investigation, and the media began to converge, drawn by the shocking nature of the crime. Local news stations, including WCI and the Post and Courier, reported live from the scene, heightening the sense of urgency. By the end of the day, the police had gathered a significant amount of evidence, but many questions remained unanswered. Who could have committed such a brutal act and why? Detectives Coco and Montez faced a challenging investigation ahead, determined to find justice for Maria. David Sullivan, Maria's husband, became the initial suspect. At 58, David's disciplined demeanor was a product of his naval career. Despite his stern exterior, he deeply loved Maria and was protective of his family. On September 12, after discovering Maria's body, the police brought David in for questioning. Detectives Coco and Montez interviewed David, who appeared calm but visibly shaken by the news of his wife's death. He explained that he had been away on a business trip in Boston, providing hotel receipts and check-in/check-out confirmations to support his alibi. The interview lasted several hours as the detectives probed into his relationship with Maria and any possible enemies she might have had. David mentioned tensions between Maria and Tyler, his son. He revealed that Tyler had struggled with accepting Maria as a mother figure following his biological mother's death. Despite these challenges, David hoped the family would eventually reconcile. The police also conducted a thorough search of the Sullivan home for additional evidence. David Sullivan's belongings, including his car, were thoroughly examined by the police, but no incriminating evidence was found. They also reviewed David's phone records and interviewed his colleagues, all of which corroborated his alibi. Despite maintaining his composure throughout the investigation, David was visibly strained by the situation. He expressed his profound grief and disbelief that anyone could harm Maria and remained fully cooperative with the police, providing them with any information they needed. Meanwhile, local news outlets, including WCI and the Post and Courier, reported extensively on the unfolding investigation. The community was shocked to learn that David had become a suspect, as many knew him as a kind and loving husband who would never harm his wife. Despite his solid alibi, the police were determined to scrutinize every aspect of David's involvement to ensure no detail was overlooked. Detectives Martin Coco and Julia Montez meticulously re-examined the crime scene and rechecked all aspects of his alibi, striving to leave no stone unturned. As the investigation progressed, it became evident that David was not connected to Maria's murder. The focus shifted to other potential suspects. Although David was cleared, the burden of losing Maria and facing suspicion weighed heavily on him. On September 15, 2012, just 3 days after the discovery of Maria's body, A light drizzle covered Somerville, mirroring the town's somber mood. Around noon, Detective Martin Coco made a startling discovery while reviewing evidence from the crime scene. Among Maria's art supplies, he found a collection of sexually explicit love letters. These letters revealed a secret affair between Maria and an unidentified individual, detailing intimate encounters and conflicting emotions. Detectives Coco and Montez carefully examined the letters, recognizing their significance as a breakthrough in the case. The letters suggested a motive for Maria's murder. Detective Coco convened a meeting with the investigative team to discuss the letters' content and implications. They realized they needed to identify the person involved in the affair to understand the full context and potential motives. Officer Montez spearheaded the effort to gather more information. She interviewed Maria's close friends and neighbors, inquiring if anyone knew about the affair. Many were shocked and unaware of Maria's involvement with anyone other than her husband, David. The revelation created a stir in the small, conservative Southern community, fueling gossip and speculation. Forensic experts analyzed the letters for fingerprints and DNA. They also reviewed Maria's phone records and email history in search of clues about her secret lover. The investigation was comprehensive, with every detail meticulously scrutinized. On the same rainy afternoon, while examining Maria's phone, the detectives uncovered a series of explicit text messages and call logs that led them to suspect Tyler, Maria's 18-year-old stepson. The messages hinted at a complex and strained sexual relationship between Maria and Tyler. Some texts were vague, while others explicitly detailed their encounters. This revelation was shocking. Tyler had been perceived as a troubled teenager, but the depth of his relationship with Maria was unexpected. The detectives knew they had to handle the situation delicately to uncover the truth. The discovery of the love letters and text messages shifted the investigation's focus, providing a clearer direction. The detectives prepared to interrogate Tyler again, this time armed with new, compelling evidence that could reveal the secrets behind Maria's tragic death. Tyler Sullivan, Maria's stepson, became a focal point in the investigation following the discovery of the love letters and text messages. As a troubled teenager grappling with his biological mother's death and Maria's arrival in his life, Tyler often acted out, displaying resentment towards Maria for assuming his mother's role. Despite his difficulties, he was intelligent and had a passion for music, spending hours playing his guitar with dreams of becoming a famous musician. On September 16, 2012, Tyler was brought in for questioning. Detectives Coco and Montez conducted the interview. Although Tyler appeared nervous, he tried to maintain his composure. The detectives began by probing his relationship with Maria. Tyler admitted that their relationship was strained but denied any involvement in her murder. When presented with the love letters, Tyler's demeanor shifted. He became visibly distressed and defensive, confessing to the affair and explaining that it had begun about a year prior. Tyler revealed that he had become obsessed with Maria, hoping they could be together if his father, David, was out of the picture. However, Maria's attempts to end the affair and focus on her marriage frustrated him. The detectives pressed Tyler for more information about the night of Maria's murder. Tyler claimed he was at a friend's house watching movies. The police checked his alibi, which proved weak and lacked solid evidence. Tyler's friend, Jake, confirmed he was with him but couldn't recall specific details or times. Tyler's reaction during the interrogation was a mixture of anger and fear. He was defensive and argumentative, vehemently denying any involvement in Maria's murder while expressing frustration over her ending their affair. The detectives noted his conflicting emotions, which fluctuated between sadness and anger. Though Tyler remained a prime suspect, the police needed more evidence to link him directly to the crime. They continued analyzing physical evidence from the crime scene and cross-referenced it with Tyler's statements. The detectives also reviewed neighborhood security camera footage, hoping to uncover inconsistencies in Tyler's alibi. The investigation into Tyler was intense and thorough. Detectives Coco and Montez were determined to uncover the truth. They knew Tyler had a motive but required concrete evidence to substantiate his involvement. The love letters and text messages were critical, but building a strong case was essential. The investigation was far from over, and the detectives continued piecing together the puzzle, with Tyler remaining a key figure in their quest for justice for Maria. Lily Beth Carter, the Sullivans' 25-year-old neighbor, also emerged as a person of interest. Known for her keen interest in true crime and her ongoing novel based on real events, Lily Beth was often seen taking notes and photos around the neighborhood. On September 17, 2012, the police brought Lily Beth in for questioning. Detectives Coco and Montez conducted the interview, finding Lily Beth calm and cooperative. She explained her passion for writing and her fascination with true crime, noting that she frequently visited Maria to discuss her novel and seek feedback. The detectives questioned Lily Beth about the morning she discovered Maria's body. She recounted the events in detail, describing how she found the studio door ajar and discovered Maria on the floor. Lily Beth shared her shock and horror and her immediate call to 911. Her account was consistent with the initial report. As the questioning continued, the detectives delved deeper into Lily Beth's relationship with the Sullivans. Lily Beth Carter revealed to the detectives that she frequently observed the Sullivan family dynamics and noted the tension between Maria and Tyler. She also mentioned that Tyler had exhibited suspicious behavior on several occasions, though she hadn't thought much of it at the time. When questioned about her interest in true crime, Lily Beth explained that her fascination was purely academic and creative. She was using her observations to create realistic characters and scenarios for her novel. She firmly denied any involvement in Maria's murder, maintaining that she was just a concerned neighbor. Lily Beth's calm and cooperative demeanor made it challenging for the detectives to determine whether she was concealing anything. Consequently, they decided to search her home for any evidence that might connect her to the crime. They discovered several notebooks filled with detailed observations about the neighborhood and the Sullivans, but nothing directly incriminating. Despite her cooperation, Lily Beth remained a person of interest. The detectives continued to monitor her closely, scrutinizing her story for any inconsistencies and reviewing neighborhood security footage for evidence that could either implicate or exonerate her. As the investigation into Lily Beth persisted, the detectives faced the challenge of distinguishing between her genuine interest in true crime and any potential involvement in Maria's death. The complexity of the case grew, but the police remained committed to uncovering the truth and seeking justice for Maria. On September 20, 2012, the investigation took a significant turn. Detective Martin Coco and Officer Julia Montez had gathered enough evidence to identify the murderer. The evidence pointed to Tyler Sullivan, Maria's 18-year-old stepson. Tyler's erratic behavior and conflicting emotions had initially raised suspicions, but it was the discovery of his fingerprints on the murder weapon that sealed his fate. Tyler had been known as a troubled teenager, struggling with his biological mother's recent death and harboring resentment towards Maria for taking her place. Despite his intelligence and passion for music, Tyler's feelings for Maria had morphed into a dangerous mix of hatred and desire. When Maria confronted Tyler about his failing grades and her decision to end their affair, Tyler's frustration and obsession drove him to violence. In a fit of rage, he attacked her with a heavy sculpture from her studio. The detectives reconstructed the events of that fateful day. Tyler had been at the house, waiting for the right moment. When Maria entered the studio, Tyler followed her, and their confrontation quickly escalated. In his fury, Tyler seized the sculpture and struck Maria multiple times, resulting in her death. With this evidence, the police prepared to arrest Tyler. On the evening of September 20th, they arrived at the Sullivan home. Tyler was in his room, listening to music on his iPod when the officers entered. Though surprised, Tyler did not resist arrest. He was handcuffed and taken to the police station for processing. David Sullivan, Tyler's father, was devastated by the news. The revelation that his son was responsible for such a brutal act tore the family apart and shocked the community. Neighbors and friends, who had known Tyler as a quiet but troubled teen, now saw him in a completely different light. During a press conference, the police detailed the evidence, explaining how Tyler's obsession with Maria and his inability to control his emotions led to the murder. The discovery of the sexually explicit letters and Tyler's fingerprints on the murder weapon were crucial in solving the case. As Tyler was led away, his reaction was a mix of anger and resignation. He understood the overwhelming evidence against him and the inevitable consequences of his actions. While Maria's friends and family were relieved that the murderer had been caught, the pain of losing Maria lingered. Tyler Sullivan's arrest brought some closure, but the path to justice was far from over. The trial of Tyler Sullivan commenced on November 5, 2012, in Summerville, South Carolina. The courtroom was packed with reporters, friends, and family members, all eager to hear the details of the case. Assistant District Attorney James Bliver, a seasoned and stern lawyer known for his tenacity, led the prosecution. He argued that Tyler's obsession with Maria, combined with his anger over the end of their affair, drove him to commit the murder. He presented the love letters, text messages, and forensic evidence linking Tyler to the crime, building a strong case that outlined Tyler's motive and actions. The defense was represented by public defender Sarah Jane Lemon, a compassionate and determined attorney with over 20 years of experience. She argued that Tyler was a troubled teenager deeply affected by his mother's death and struggling with mental health issues. Lemon contended that Tyler's actions were not premeditated but resulted from emotional turmoil and confusion. Throughout the trial, the emotional toll on Maria's family was evident. David Sullivan sat in the front row, his face etched with grief and disbelief. Friends and family members wept quietly as the details of Maria's tragic death were revealed. After several weeks of testimony and evidence, the jury deliberated for 2 days before returning with a verdict on December 3, 2012. Tyler Sullivan was found guilty of second-degree murder. The courtroom was silent as the judge read the verdict. Tyler's expression was blank as he listened to the verdict. The sentencing took place on December 10, 2012. Tyler was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge stated that while Tyler's actions were driven by emotional distress, the brutality of the crime warranted a severe punishment. The sentence aimed to provide justice for Maria and her family while acknowledging Tyler's troubled background. Maria's family had mixed reactions to the sentence. Some felt it was too lenient given the nature of the crime, while others believed it struck a fair balance between justice and compassion for Tyler's mental state. The community of Summerville was left to grapple with the aftermath of the tragedy, hoping to find some sense of closure. The trial and sentencing of Tyler Sullivan were widely covered by local media, including WCI and the Post and Courier. The case served as a sobering reminder of the impact of emotional and mental health issues and their devastating consequences. Following Tyler's sentencing, life in Summerville slowly began to move forward. The trial had been traumatic for everyone involved, leaving lasting impacts on the community. David Sullivan, struggling to cope with the loss of his wife and the imprisonment of his son, took a leave of absence from his job and sought counseling to deal with his grief and sense of betrayal. Though friends and neighbors provided support, David often felt isolated and decided to move to Charleston to start anew, away from the painful memories of Summerville. Tyler's adjustment to incarceration was also challenging. He was sent to a state correctional facility where he began receiving psychological counseling. The prison system offered educational programs, and Tyler enrolled in classes to complete his high school education while studying music theory, still clinging to his dream of becoming a musician. In the wake of the tragic events, Lily Beth Carter, the neighbor and true crime enthusiast, was deeply affected by the ordeal. She continued to work on her novel, now incorporating the harrowing experiences she had lived through. Despite the unwanted attention from the local media, including WCI and the Post and Courier, Lily Beth remained focused on her writing, finding solace in her creative work. Detective Martin Coco and Officer Julia Montez, the lead investigators on the case, received commendations for their diligent efforts in solving the crime. Their success reinforced their commitment to justice and underscored the importance of thorough police work. The case also highlighted the pressing need for increased support for mental health issues, both within families and the broader community. Life in Summerville gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the memory of Maria Rodari Sullivan and the tragic events remained etched in the hearts of those who knew her. The town resolved to support mental health initiatives and honor Maria's legacy, creating a lasting tribute to her life. Thank you for listening to this episode of True Crime Case Files. The tragic story of Maria Rodari Sullivan reminds us of the complexities of human relationships and the dark paths obsession can lead us down. Join us next time as we explore another case in our pursuit of truth and justice. Stay safe. Welcome to the Crime Insight channel, where we explore the most perplexing and chilling criminal cases. In today's episode, we delve into a shocking murder case from Florida in September 2006. This tragic story uncovers a web of deception and hidden lives. We're talking about Emily Kenyon, a devoted wife and cherished community member whose life ended in a brutal manner after uncovering her husband's dark secrets. Emily Kenyon was a 37-year-old resident of West Palm Beach, Florida. Known for her warmth and kindness, she had a special fondness for snakes. Emily worked as a curator at a local reptile house, where she cared for a variety of snakes, including pythons, boas, and even a rare green mamba. Outside of work, Emily was an avid gardener, spending her spare time nurturing her plants and flowers. Emily attended the University of South Florida, where she studied biology. It was there that she met Marlon Kenyon, and they married soon after her graduation. They settled into a cozy house with a large backyard, ideal for her gardening and snake enclosures. Emily was especially close to her younger brother, Brian, who taught in Orlando. She was deeply involved in her community, volunteering at the local animal shelter, organizing charity events, and being an active member of the West Palm Beach Garden Club, where she frequently shared gardening tips with friends and neighbors. Emily was widely admired for her friendliness, her willingness to help others, and her vibrant personality. In September 2006, Emily's life took a dramatic turn. She discovered that her husband, Marlon, was secretly married to another woman named Zara Pinnock, who Emily knew as her gynecologist. This revelation was a devastating blow. Emily confided in her close friend and colleague, Robert Banjevac, who shared her love for snakes. Concerned for her safety, Robert advised her to be cautious. Despite the upheaval, Emily chose to confront Marlon to demand answers and figure out her next steps. She continued with her daily routines, working at the reptile house and tending to her garden. Emily even participated in a community fair, helping with a snake exhibit and delighting in the children's amazed reactions. During this tumultuous time, Emily also discovered that she was pregnant. This news added to her emotional stress, but she remained hopeful about the future. She planned to visit her brother in Orlando to discuss her situation and seek advice. Tragically, Emily never got the chance to share her plans. Her life was cut short before she could resolve the turmoil caused by Marlon's betrayal. On the morning of September 10, 2006, West Palm Beach was shrouded in overcast skies, hinting at rain. Around 7:30 a.m., Linda Ross, Emily Kenyon's neighbor, was walking her dog, Harrove Lansky, when she noticed something amiss. Linda was accustomed to seeing Emily working in her garden at this time, but today, the backyard was eerily silent. Concerned, Linda went to check on Emily. As she approached the backyard fence, she saw Emily lying on the ground near her favorite rose bushes. Linda's alarm grew as she realized something was terribly wrong. She called out to Emily but received no response. With rising anxiety, she opened the gate and rushed to Emily's side. The sight that greeted her was horrifying. Emily was face down in a pool of blood, brutally beaten, with a bloody golf club lying nearby. Panicked, Linda immediately dialed 911, her hands trembling as she spoke to the operator. Emergency services arrived within minutes, and paramedics confirmed that Emily was dead. Still in shock, Linda was asked to sit down and calm herself. The neighborhood was soon swarming with police cars and curious onlookers peering through their windows, trying to grasp what had happened. News of Emily's death spread quickly, and local media, including the Palm Beach Post, reported on the incident. The residents of West Palm Beach were left in disbelief and mourning the loss of a beloved community member. The police were determined to find out who was responsible for this brutal crime. At approximately 7:45 a.m. on September 10, 2006, the West Palm Beach Police Department arrived at Emily Kenyon's home. The sky remained overcast with rain still threatening. Detectives James Avery and Avery Brooks were leading the investigation, understanding that every minute was crucial. Detective Avery, known for his sharp eye and composed manner, took charge of the scene. His partner, Detective Brooks, was meticulous and methodical, ensuring that evidence was preserved. The backyard had transformed into a crime scene, and the once beautiful garden resembled a battlefield. Blood was splattered across the grass and patio, and an overturned pot lay next to Emily's body. Detectives quickly noticed the bloody golf club beside Emily, which appeared to be the murder weapon. Emily's body bore the signs of a violent struggle, with multiple wounds to her head and upper body. The scene was chaotic, with broken flower pots and scattered gardening tools indicating a fierce attack. Forensic experts arrived shortly after the detectives. They carefully collected evidence, including the golf club, blood samples, and potential DNA evidence. They photographed every angle of the scene, ensuring nothing was overlooked. The crime scene unit also dusted for fingerprints on the golf club and nearby surfaces. Detectives Avery and Brooks began their investigation by speaking with Linda Ross, the neighbor who had discovered Emily's body. Though still shaken, Linda provided a detailed and consistent account of what she had seen, which helped the detectives establish the initial timeline. As the investigation continued, detectives canvassed the neighborhood, interviewing other residents to determine if they had noticed anything unusual that morning. Some neighbors reported hearing a loud argument the previous night, but no one had seen anyone enter or leave the Kenyon property. Inside the house, detectives searched for further clues. They looked for signs of forced entry but found none, suggesting that Emily might have known her attacker. They also checked for any missing or disturbed personal items. Emily's purse and cell phone were still in the house, ruling out robbery as a motive. Detectives Avery and Brooks understood the urgency of their task. The evidence indicated a personal motive, and they were determined to uncover the identity of the perpetrator. They reviewed the evidence and prepared to question those closest to Emily, starting with her husband, Marlon Kenyon. At 35 years old, Marlon Kenyon seemed to lead a perfect life. He was a successful financial advisor in West Palm Beach, known for his charm and good looks. However, Marlon Kenyon was concealing a dark and troubling secret. He was leading a double life. Beyond his marriage to Emily, he was also secretly married to another woman, Zara Pinnock, in Miami. Emily uncovered this shocking truth just days before her murder, which placed immense strain on their marriage. Even more startling, unknown to both of his wives, Marlon had a hidden career as a gay adult film star under the alias Ash Ketchum. Detectives James Avery and Avery Brooks brought Marlon in for questioning on the very day Emily's body was discovered. The interrogation took place at the West Palm Beach Police Department. Marlon appeared calm and composed, but the detectives were resolute in their quest for the truth. "Marlon, can you tell us where you were last night?" Detective Avery asked. "I was in Miami on business," Marlon replied. "I stayed at a hotel, you can verify it." "Did Emily know about your other marriage?" Detective Brooks inquired. "Yes, she found out recently," Marlon said. "It's been difficult for us, but I would never harm her." The detectives verified Marlon's alibi. He claimed to have been staying at the Hilton Miami downtown, a reputable hotel. Records confirmed his check-in. However, the timeline raised suspicions. Marlon could have driven back to West Palm Beach, committed the crime, and then returned to Miami. Despite his calm demeanor, Marlon's secret life presented a strong motive. Emily's discovery threatened to expose him, and he had much to lose. The detectives found Marlon's calmness unnerving, as if his responses were rehearsed. They continued probing into his whereabouts, his relationship with Emily, and his hidden life. Marlon insisted on his innocence, claiming he loved Emily and would never hurt her. The detectives knew they needed more evidence to prove his guilt. Marlon was released but remained under surveillance. Detectives Avery and Brooks pressed on with their investigation, hoping to uncover something linking him to the crime. They interviewed Marlon's co-workers, examined his financial records, and spoke with his second wife, Zara, who was also shocked by the revelations. The case against Marlon was growing, but they needed a critical piece of evidence, a smoking gun, to secure a conviction. The second suspect in Emily Kenyon's murder was Zara Pinnock, Marlon's other wife. Zara, a 30-year-old gynecologist, was known for her dedication to her patients at a Miami clinic. She was compassionate, hardworking, and respected in her field. Unbeknownst to her, she was entangled in Marlon's secret double life. When detectives Avery and Brooks contacted Zara on September 12, 2006, she learned about Emily's murder and Marlon's deception. Zara had no idea that Marlon was married to another woman. The detectives drove to Miami to speak with her at her clinic. Zara greeted them with a pale and distressed demeanor. Her genuine reaction and willingness to cooperate made it clear that she was as much a victim of Marlon's deceit as Emily had been. Zara provided the detectives with Marlon's schedule and details about his behavior over the past few weeks. Despite her shock and sadness, Zara remained composed. She explained that she had last seen Marlon on the evening of September 9th, when he left for what he claimed was a business trip to Miami. Zara had no reason to doubt him, but now felt a profound sense of betrayal. The detectives asked Zara if she had any reason to believe Marlon might harm Emily. "No," Zara responded. "I never imagined he was capable of something like this. He was always so caring and attentive. But now, I don't know what to believe." After the interview, detectives Avery and Brooks reviewed Zara's statements and alibi. They confirmed that she was indeed at work the night of Emily's murder, making it impossible for her to have committed the crime. However, her testimony provided valuable insight into Marlon's character and possible motives. Zara's heartbreak and anger at Marlon's betrayal were evident, and she cooperated fully with the investigation, eager for justice for Emily. With Zara cleared as a suspect, the detectives refocused their efforts on Marlon. They felt they were closing in on the truth but needed more evidence to solidify their case. They hoped that further investigation would reveal the final pieces of the puzzle. On September 15, 2006, 5 days after Emily Kenyon's murder, new evidence surfaced. The weather that morning was sunny with a light breeze, offering a brief respite from the recent gloom. Around 9 a.m., Detective James Avery received a call from a local pawn shop owner, Henry Guanabo. Henry reported finding a gold bracelet engraved with Emily's initials. Detectives Avery and Brooks hurried to Turner's Pawn Shop on CLA Street, a well-known shopping area in West Palm Beach. The shop was small but filled with various items, from old guitars to vintage jewelry. Henry handed the bracelet to Detective Avery, explaining that a man had tried to sell it 2 days ago. The detectives examined the bracelet, recognizing it immediately as one Emily frequently wore. Henry described the man who had attempted to sell it, and his description closely matched that of Emily's close friend and co-worker, Robert Banjevac. This crucial lead suggested that Robert might be involved. The detectives took the bracelet back to the police station for further analysis. Forensic experts confirmed that the bracelet belonged to Emily and found fingerprints on it that matched Robert's. This evidence brought them closer to solving the case. Later that day, they reviewed surveillance footage from nearby businesses around the pawn shop. The footage clearly showed Robert entering the shop, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. This footage provided a crucial link between Robert and the stolen bracelet. Detectives Avery and Brooks discussed their next steps and decided to bring Robert in for questioning. The new evidence was compelling and they hoped it would pressure Robert into confessing. Robert Banjevac, a 49-year-old close friend and colleague of Emily's in the snake-collecting community, was now a key suspect in her murder. Robert was known for his deep passion for reptiles and his intense, unrequited love for Emily. He had a history of mental instability and occasional violent outbursts, which had drawn the detectives' attention. On September 16, 2006, a day after the new evidence against Marlon came to light, detectives James Avery and Avery Brooks decided to interview Robert at his home. The weather that morning was typical for Florida, sunny with a few clouds. Robert lived in a modest house filled with snake terrariums and reptile memorabilia. When the detectives arrived, they noticed his nervous demeanor. He was a tall, thin man with glasses, appearing anxious as he led them into his living room. Robert and Emily had shared a close friendship, bonded by their mutual love for snakes. They often spent time together at reptile shows and events, a fact well known in their community. Robert admitted to the detectives that he was aware of the issues in Emily's marriage to Marlon. Emily had confided in him about Marlon's other wife, which had left her deeply upset and uncertain about her future. This revelation gave the detectives insight into Robert's potential motive. His unreciprocated feelings for Emily might have driven him to extreme actions. As the interrogation continued, Robert's agitation grew. His intense anger towards Marlon for hurting Emily was evident, but he maintained that he would never harm her. Despite his assurances, his unstable history and strong feelings for Emily made him a significant suspect. Robert's alibi for the night of the murder was weak. He claimed to have been home alone tending to his snakes, but no one could confirm his story. The detectives noted Robert's increasing distress as he expressed regret for not being able to save Emily and his sadness over their unfulfilled relationship. Further investigation revealed that Robert had visited Emily's garden the day after the murder. He claimed the visit was to check on her snakes, but the timing raised suspicion. Neighbors reported seeing Robert's car leaving late on the night of the murder and returning early the next morning, contradicting his claim of being home. The detectives also examined Robert's medical history and found past treatment for depression and anger issues. His troubled past, combined with his intense feelings for Emily, painted a picture of a man who could potentially commit a crime of passion. Despite his emotional state and suspicious behavior, the detectives needed more concrete evidence to determine his involvement in Emily's murder. They continued to monitor him closely while gathering additional clues to either implicate or clear him in the case. A breakthrough in Emily Kenyon's murder case came on September 18, 2006. The morning was overcast and humid, typical for West Palm Beach in late summer. The detectives had been tirelessly piecing together clues when new evidence emerged from an unexpected source: a neighbor's security camera. The camera, installed to monitor the neighbor's yard, had captured part of Emily's backyard on the night of the murder. The footage showed Marlon Kenyon entering the backyard with a golf club and moments later, leaving with blood on his clothes. Detectives Avery and Brooks reviewed the footage and realized they had obtained critical evidence. The footage clearly placed Marlon at the crime scene with the murder weapon. They prepared for Marlon's arrest, knowing it was a crucial step in bringing justice for Emily. At 3 p.m., under a cloudy sky, the detectives arrived at Marlon's office. Marlon was in a meeting discussing financial plans with clients. The detectives waited in the lobby, observing him through the glass walls. Marlon appeared confident and composed, unaware of the impending storm. When the detectives entered the room and announced his arrest, Marlon's reaction was one of shock and anger. He loudly protested, stripping off all his clothes and insisting on his innocence. The detectives handcuffed him and read him his rights while his colleagues watched in stunned silence. Marlon's calm facade had finally shattered in dramatic fashion. Marlon was taken to the West Palm Beach Police Department for booking. During interrogation, he continued to deny any involvement in Emily's murder. However, the evidence against him was overwhelming. The fingerprints and security footage painted a damning picture of Marlon's guilt. As Marlon awaited trial, the community grappled with the shocking revelations. Emily had been a beloved member of the community, and her murder left a significant void. The arrest of her husband, a man who had seemed so charming and trustworthy, was a stark reminder of the hidden darkness that can lie beneath the surface. Marlon Kenyon's trial for the murder of his wife Emily Kenyon began on December 1, 2004. The courthouse in West Palm Beach buzzed with media attention, drawing reporters from local news stations. The courtroom was filled with Emily's family, friends, and curious onlookers, all eager to see justice served. The prosecution was led by Carla Matthews, a 45-year-old seasoned attorney known for her relentless pursuit of justice. Matthews presented a strong case, starting with the shocking evidence: the security camera footage showing Marlon with a golf club, the blood-stained clothes, and the pawned bracelet with Emily's initials. She argued that Marlon's motive was to silence Emily after she discovered his double life and threatened to expose him. The defense attorney, Mike Travin, a 50-year-old veteran lawyer with a reputation for defending difficult cases, argued that Marlon was innocent. He claimed the evidence was circumstantial and suggested that someone else, possibly Robert Banjevac, could have committed the crime out of jealousy and anger. Throughout the trial, Emily's family watched with a mix of hope and grief. Her parents sat in the front row, clutching each other's hands tightly, while her sister wiped away tears. Testimony from Emily's friends and co-workers painted a picture of a kind and loving woman whose life was tragically cut short. On December 15th, after weeks of testimony and 3 days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. The courtroom fell silent as the foreman stood to read the decision, Marlon Kenyon was found guilty of first-degree murder. Gasps and whispers filled the room, followed by tears and hugs from Emily's family. Marlon was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Emily's brother addressed the court, emphasizing the gravity of Marlon's betrayal and its impact on his family and the community. Marlon showed little emotion as he was led away in handcuffs, his once confident demeanor replaced by a blank stare. The verdict and sentencing brought a sense of justice to Emily's family and friends. While the pain of losing her would never fully heal, they found solace in knowing that Marlon would pay for his crime. The community, too, felt a measure of relief as the trial's conclusion marked the end of a dark chapter. After Marlon Kenyon was sentenced to life in prison without parole, the lives of those involved in Emily Kenyon's case slowly began to move forward. The trial, which concluded in December 2004, left a lasting impact on everyone. Emily's family struggled to cope with her loss. Her parents found some comfort in their community and the support of friends. They established a scholarship fund in Emily's name at the University of South Florida, hoping to help aspiring snake enthusiasts follow in her footsteps. Zara Pinnock, Marlon's second wife, faced her own challenges. Shocked and heartbroken by Marlon's betrayal and crimes, she decided to leave West Palm Beach and return to her hometown of Trenton, New Jersey. Robert Banjevac, Emily's close friend and colleague, struggled deeply with her death and the brief suspicion cast on him. After the trial, Robert sought therapy to deal with his grief and mental health issues. He continued to care for Emily's snakes, ensuring her legacy lived on through their well-being. Marlon Kenyon, now serving his life sentence, remained largely silent. His double life and the tragic consequences of his actions became subjects of ongoing discussions among fellow inmates and prison staff. His fall from grace served as a cautionary tale about the destructive power of secrets and lies. Emily Kenyon's tragic death had a profound impact on everyone involved. While justice was served, the pain of her loss lingered. The community's efforts to honor her memory and support each other highlighted the resilience and strength that emerged in the wake of such a devastating event. Emily Kenyon's life was cut short by the deceit and desperation of those she trusted most. Her story serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating consequences of betrayal. Thank you for joining us on this episode of True Crime Case Files. Until next time, stay vigilant and stay safe. If you're interested in more real-life murder mysteries, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Do you have any thoughts about this case or another case you'd like us to investigate? Leave us a comment. Until then, stay safe, True Crime Case Solvers. Welcome to True Crime Cases, where we dive deep into the most unsettling aspects of human nature. In today's episode, we unravel the shocking story of a groom who vanished on his wedding night, revealing hidden secrets about the bride. Michael Anderson, a 32-year-old software engineer, and Olivia Hartley, a 28-year-old elementary school teacher, had just exchanged vows in a magnificent ceremony at the historic Armel Mission Basilica. This beautiful church, known for its stunning Spanish colonial architecture, set a romantic stage for what many guests described as a fairy tale wedding. Yet, this fairy tale would soon take a dark turn. As the sun dipped below the Pacific Ocean, casting a golden hue over the reception at the luxurious Carmel Valley Ranch, guests celebrated the newlyweds with joy and excitement. Michael and Olivia, high school sweethearts who had been together for over a decade, seemed perfectly in love. Their affectionate glances and stolen kisses were a clear sign of their happiness, which was evident to everyone around them. Around 11:30 p.m., as the party began to wind down, Michael left to use the restroom. This was the last time anyone saw him. When he didn't return after 20 minutes, Olivia, growing worried, asked her brother to check on him. The restroom was empty, and a quick search of the venue turned up no sign of Michael. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. At first, guests and family thought it might be a prank or that Michael had simply stepped out for a walk to clear his mind after the excitement. But as the hours passed with no sign of the groom, concern turned into full-blown panic. Olivia, still in her wedding dress, paced anxiously, her mascara running down her face as she repeatedly tried to call Michael on his cell phone. By 3 a.m., with Michael still missing, Olivia made the difficult choice to contact the Monterey County Sheriff's Office. Deputy Sarah Martinez arrived at the scene, her face serious as she assessed the unusual situation. A missing groom on his wedding night was far from normal, and the experienced officer knew immediately this case was anything but ordinary. The next few days saw an extensive search operation across Carmel and the surrounding areas. Search and rescue teams scoured nearby beaches and hiking trails, while divers explored the coastal waters, fearing the worst. Flyers with Michael's photo and description were posted all over town, and local news stations continuously updated the public on the case. Detective James Reeves, a seasoned investigator with the Monterey County Sheriff's Office, began digging into the couple's background. On the surface, Michael and Olivia seemed to have the perfect relationship. They were both well regarded in their community, active in local charities, and appeared devoted to each other. However, as Detective Reeves would soon discover, beneath this seemingly perfect exterior lay a web of secrets and lies. The first crack in this perfect facade appeared when Reeves interviewed Michael's best friend and best man, Ryan Thompson. Ryan uneasily revealed that Michael had confided in him just days before the wedding. According to Ryan, Michael had discovered something troubling about Olivia's past and was contemplating calling off the wedding. Ryan didn't know the specifics, only that Michael had been deeply troubled and conflicted. This revelation cast a new light on the case. Was Michael's disappearance voluntary? Had he gotten cold feet and decided to run away, or was there something more sinister at play? Detective Reeves realized he needed to investigate Olivia Hartley more closely. To the public eye, Olivia seemed like the grieving bride. In interviews, she appeared devastated, pleading for Michael's safe return. Her apparent anguish drew sympathy from both the community and the media. Yet, as the investigation deepened, inconsistencies in her story began to surface. A breakthrough came when detectives discovered financial records showing large sums of money being withdrawn from Michael's accounts in the weeks leading up to the wedding. Although these transactions were authorized using Michael's credentials, the timing and amounts were suspicious. When confronted, Olivia claimed ignorance, stating that Michael handled all their finances. Further investigation into Olivia's background led to a startling revelation. Olivia Hartley was not who she claimed to be. Fingerprint analysis showed that she was actually Sarah Blackwood, a woman reported missing from Portland, Oregon, over a decade ago. This discovery shocked the community. How could the beloved elementary school teacher, known for her kindness and dedication, be living under a false identity? The truth, as investigators would soon find, was a dark and twisted tale of deception spanning years. Sarah Blackwood had grown up in a troubled home in Portland. Her father, a prominent businessman, had been emotionally and physically abusive. At 18, Sarah disappeared, leaving a note saying she couldn't endure the abuse any longer. The case went cold, and Sarah Blackwood was presumed dead. But she hadn't died. She had reinvented herself as Olivia Hartley, moving to California and carefully constructing a new identity. She met Michael Anderson in college and over time had created an elaborate web of lies to conceal her true past. The pressing question was whether Michael had discovered the truth about his bride. And if he had, what had happened to him? As the investigation continued, more disturbing details emerged. Forensic analysis of the couple's shared computer revealed searches for ways to disappear without a trace in the weeks before the wedding. Although these searches had been deleted, cyber experts managed to recover the data. Additionally, security camera footage from a gas station just outside Carmel showed a woman matching Olivia's description buying a prepaid cell phone and a large sum of cash the day before the wedding. Confronted with this evidence, Olivia broke down and admitted she had been living under a false identity. However, she denied any involvement in Michael's disappearance, tearfully explaining that she had planned to tell him the truth after the wedding. She insisted that she loved him and was terrified of losing him if he learned about her past. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the case of the missing groom continued to baffle investigators. Despite exhaustive searches and countless interviews, no trace of Michael Anderson was found. The once idyllic town of Carmel by the sea was now at the heart of a national media frenzy. Theories ran wild. Some believed Michael had discovered Olivia's true identity and fled in shock, while others speculated that Olivia, fearing exposure, had orchestrated Michael's disappearance. The most sinister theories suggested that Michael had been murdered and his body hidden somewhere in the vast wilderness around Carmel. The case took another unexpected turn 6 months after the ill-fated wedding when a weathered backpack was discovered in a remote area of the Baranda Trail in Big Sur, about 30 miles south of Carmel. Inside the backpack were men's clothes, a large amount of cash, and a passport belonging to Michael Anderson. This discovery reignited the investigation. Search teams once again combed the rugged terrain of Big Sur, hoping to find some trace of Michael. Search dogs were brought in, but no human remains were found. The location of the backpack suggested that Michael had at least made it this far on his own. Forensic analysis of the backpack and its contents raised more questions than answers. While the passport and clothes were confirmed to be Michael's, there were no fingerprints or DNA evidence to verify if Michael himself had placed the backpack there. The cash inside totaled over $50,000, leading investigators to believe Michael had planned his own disappearance. As the investigation continued, detectives uncovered more about Olivia's past life as Sarah Blackwood. They discovered that her father, Robert Blackwood, had died under suspicious circumstances just months before Sarah's disappearance. Although officially ruled an accident, there had been whispers of foul play. Could Sarah have been involved in her father's death? This revelation added another layer of complexity to the case. If Michael had discovered Olivia's true identity and her possible involvement in her father's death, it might explain his sudden disappearance. Fear for his safety could have driven him to flee. But why hadn't Michael come forward if he was alive and hiding? Surely he would have seen the media coverage of his disappearance. His silence was both puzzling and troubling. As the one-year anniversary of Michael's disappearance approached, the case had become one of the most talked-about mysteries in recent memory. True crime podcasts dissected every detail, internet sleuths analyzed the evidence, and the residents of Carmel by the Sea lived under the shadow of an unresolved tragedy. Olivia, or Sarah as she was now known, remained in Carmel, living under constant scrutiny. She had lost her teaching job when her true identity was revealed and found herself ostracized by the community that once embraced her. Despite her insistence on innocence and her claims of loving Michael, the ongoing investigation and media attention took a heavy toll on her. Once vibrant and outgoing, Olivia now faced an uncertain future amid the echoes of a case that continued to baffle and haunt everyone involved. Olivia withdrew from the world, rarely stepping outside her home. Those who caught a glimpse of her noted that she appeared far older than her actual age, weighed down by her hidden secrets and an uncertain future. In a surprising twist, 18 months after Michael vanished, Olivia contacted Detective Reeves. She claimed to have remembered something that could be crucial for solving the case. During a detailed interview, Olivia revealed that in the weeks before the wedding, Michael had been behaving strangely. He was making secret phone calls and seemed preoccupied and nervous. This new information prompted investigators to review Michael's phone records from before his disappearance. They found several calls to a number in Mexico. Tracing this number led them to a small beachside hotel in Tulum, a well-known tourist spot on the Yucatan Peninsula. Detective Reeves and his team traveled to Tulum in hopes of cracking the case. At the hotel, they showed Michael's picture to the staff. To their surprise, one employee recognized him. The staff member revealed that someone resembling Michael had stayed at the hotel for several months under the name David Green. The employee said David had arrived alone, paid in cash, and kept to himself. He left suddenly about 6 months ago and had no forwarding address. The employee recalled him because he always seemed on edge, as if he was escaping from something. This new lead complicated the investigation. If Michael had indeed fled to Mexico, it suggested his disappearance might have been voluntary. But why would he leave behind his life, family, and new wife? And where did he go after leaving Tulum? As news of this development spread, public opinion began to shift. Many who had sympathized with Olivia now questioned her. If Michael had left on his own, could it be because he discovered something about her? What had once seemed like a potential murder mystery now looked more like a story of betrayal and deceit. Back in Carmel, Olivia faced increased scrutiny. She insisted she knew nothing about Michael's plans or whereabouts, but few believed her. Her history of deceit made it hard for people to trust her. The case took another dramatic turn when detectives following the Mexico lead found that a man matching Michael's description had crossed the border into Belize 3 months after leaving Tulum. After that, the trail went cold again. As the second anniversary of Michael's disappearance approached, the case remained unsolved. Michael Anderson had disappeared without a trace, leaving behind a tangled web of lies, unanswered questions, and a community forever changed by the events of that ill-fated wedding night. Carmel by the Sea became divided. Some saw Olivia as a victim, someone whose past had caught up with her in a harsh way. Others viewed her as a schemer who had driven her husband away. The truth, as often happens, likely lay somewhere in between. Unable to endure the constant scrutiny and gossip, Olivia eventually left Carmel. She moved to a small town in Northern California, trying once again to start fresh. But the shadow of her past and the mystery of Michael's disappearance continued to haunt her. Michael's family, particularly his parents, Thomas and Margaret Anderson, were left in a state of ongoing uncertainty. They couldn't mourn their son due to the lack of proof of his death, yet they couldn't hold out hope for his return as the years passed without any news. They became advocates for missing persons, channeling their grief into assisting other families facing similar distress. The case of the missing groom became a cautionary tale, highlighting how darkness can lurk beneath the surface, even in the most picturesque places. It sparked discussions about identity, trust, and the secrets we keep from those closest to us. Over time, the mystery of Michael Anderson's disappearance became a part of local lore in Carmel by the Sea. Tour guides would point out the Carmel Mission Basilica, not only for its historical significance but also as the site of the wedding that led to one of the most perplexing disappearances in recent memory. Occasionally, new leads would surface, briefly reviving interest in the cold case. A man in Costa Rica who looked like Michael and a woman in Australia who claimed to have dated someone matching his description were investigated, but none led to Michael. 5 years after his disappearance, on what would have been Michael and Olivia's wedding anniversary, a mysterious package arrived at the Monterey County Sheriff's Office. Inside was a USB drive containing a video file. The video showed Michael, now older and weary, sitting on a beach at sunset. In the video, Michael finally spoke out. He explained that he had discovered Olivia's true identity before the wedding and was deeply hurt by the deception. He had intended to confront her after the ceremony. However, as he delved deeper into Sarah Blackwood's past, he found something even more disturbing. Michael claimed he had discovered evidence suggesting Olivia was involved in her father's death. Fearing for his safety, he made the difficult decision to disappear. He apologized for the pain he had caused his family but insisted he had no other choice. The video concluded with Michael saying that by the time anyone saw it, he would be in a place they could never find. He asked everyone to move on and find peace. The revelation caused another wave of shock in the community. It confirmed that Michael was alive when the video was made, but also raised new questions. Where was Michael now? And was Olivia really involved in her father's death? Investigators reopened the case of Robert Blackwood's death, looking at it with new perspectives. They found inconsistencies in the original investigation, suggesting that the accidental death ruling might have been hasty. However, without concrete evidence, they couldn't prove any wrongdoing. Olivia, faced with Michael's accusations, continued to claim her innocence. She admitted to fleeing an abusive home but firmly denied any involvement in her father's death. The years of living under a false identity had taken a toll on her, leaving her a shadow of her former self. As the case faded from the headlines once more, the residents of Carmel by the Sea were left to reflect on the nature of truth, identity, and the secrets everyone carries. The charming town, with its picturesque cottages and stunning views, would forever be linked to a mystery that defied easy answers. Michael and Olivia's story became a modern legend, a tale of love, betrayal, and the extremes people will go to escape their past. It served as a reminder that sometimes the most shocking secrets are hidden behind the facade of normalcy. In the end, the case of the vanishing groom left a lasting impact on everyone involved. It changed lives, ruined reputations, and forced a community to confront uncomfortable truths. The beautiful coastline of Carmel by the Sea, once a symbol of peace and romance, now held a darker significance for those familiar with the case. As years turned into decades, the mystery of Michael Anderson's disappearance continued to fascinate the public. The case inspired numerous books, documentaries, and even a Hollywood film, each adding new layers to the story and blurring the lines between fact and fiction. In Carmel by the Sea, the case's impact persisted long after the media frenzy had subsided. The Carmel Mission Basilica, once a popular wedding venue, saw a decline in ceremonies as couples hesitated to tempt fate. The Carmel Valley Ranch, where the ill-fated reception took place, eventually rebranded itself in hopes of distancing from the infamous disappearance. 20 years after Michael vanished, a new breakthrough renewed interest in the cold case. A marine biologist exploring a remote underwater cave off the coast of Belize made an astonishing discovery. The researcher found a waterproof case lodged in a crevice, containing a journal with entries dated over several years. The handwriting matched Michael Anderson's. The journal provided insight into Michael's life on the run. He wrote about his constant fear of being found, his regret for leaving his family, and his ongoing struggle with Olivia's deception. The entries revealed a man torn between his desire for safety and his longing for his former life. Most intriguingly, the final entry, dated just 2 years before the journal was discovered, hinted at Michael's plan to confront his past. He wrote about intending to return to the United States and face the consequences of his actions. However, the journal ended abruptly, leaving investigators wondering what happened to Michael after he wrote that last entry. The discovery of the journal reignited public interest in the case. Speculations surged about Michael's fate. Had he followed through on his plan to return? If so, why hadn't he appeared? Or had something happened to him before he could make his way back? Olivia, now in her late 40s, had crafted a quiet and solitary life in a small Oregon town, ironically not far from her childhood home as Sarah Blackwood. She had reclaimed her birth name legally and worked as a freelance writer, deliberately avoiding any media attention. When news broke of the discovery of Michael's journal, reporters once again sought her out. Through her lawyer, Olivia issued a brief statement expressing hope that the journal might finally provide answers about Michael's whereabouts. She reiterated her innocence regarding both Michael's disappearance and her father's death, pleading for privacy as the investigation continued. Detective James Reeves, now retired, followed the developments with keen interest. The case had been a defining moment in his career, and even in retirement, he found it impossible to let go. With the current investigator's permission, Reeves volunteered his time to assist in analyzing the new evidence. As he meticulously reviewed the journal entries, he noticed something that others had overlooked. Certain phrases and references seemed to be coded messages. Drawing on his years of experience, Reeves began to decipher what he believed was a hidden message within the text. After weeks of painstaking work, Reeves made a breakthrough. He believed he had uncovered coordinates hidden in the journal entries, pointing to a location in the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest, not far from where Sarah Blackwood had grown up. A team of investigators was dispatched to this location. Following a grueling trek through rough terrain, they discovered a small, abandoned cabin. Inside, they found evidence suggesting someone had been living there until recently. Among the items left behind was a laptop computer. Forensic analysis of the laptop revealed a wealth of information, including detailed files about Robert Blackwood's death. These files indicated that Robert's death had indeed been a murder, not the accident initially ruled. However, the files also exonerated Sarah, Olivia, pointing instead to a conspiracy involving Robert's business partners. The laptop also contained a video file similar to the one Michael had sent years earlier. In this new video, a visibly aged Michael Anderson explained everything. He revealed that after discovering the truth about Robert Blackwood's death, he had faked his own disappearance to protect both himself and Olivia while he gathered evidence. Michael detailed how he had spent years investigating the case, always staying one step ahead of those who might want to silence him. The journal and coded messages were all part of his elaborate plan to expose the truth. In the video, Michael expressed deep remorse for the pain he had caused his family and Olivia. He explained that he had initially fled out of fear and confusion but realized he couldn't return without endangering those he loved. The video ended with Michael's intention to turn himself in and present his evidence to the authorities, hoping to bring closure to the case and allow everyone to move on. Tragically, Michael never made it to the authorities. 2 days after the discovery of the cabin, a body was found washed up on a beach near Eureka, California. Dental records confirmed it was Michael Anderson. The autopsy revealed that Michael had died from a gunshot wound. This development opened a new chapter in the already complex case. Had Michael been killed by those involved in the conspiracy he had uncovered, or was there yet another twist? As news of Michael's death spread, Carmel by the Sea once again found itself in the spotlight. The tragic end to Michael's case brought a somber mood to the town. Many residents who had once harshly judged him for his disappearance now felt a deep sadness for the life he had lived in hiding and the circumstances of his death. Olivia, upon learning of Michael's death, was devastated. In her first public appearance in years, she gave a heartfelt interview expressing her grief and regret. She spoke of the love she and Michael had shared, the pain of their separation, and her hope that the full truth would finally come to light. The evidence Michael had gathered led to a series of high-profile arrests and convictions. Several prominent business figures were implicated in Robert Blackwood's death and other criminal activities. This revelation sent shockwaves through the corporate world and led to calls for greater oversight and transparency in business practices. For Olivia, this meant she was finally cleared of any wrongdoing in her father's death. The revelation that she had been a victim rather than a perpetrator led to a shift in public opinion. Many who had vilified her over the years now saw her in a new light, as a woman who had suffered greatly due to circumstances beyond her control. In the wake of these revelations, Olivia chose to honor Michael's memory by establishing the Michael Anderson Foundation for Truth and Justice. The foundation aimed to help individuals who had been wrongly accused or victimized by corporate crime. Through this work, Olivia found a measure of peace and purpose. The case of Michael and Olivia evolved from a sensational true crime story into a cautionary tale about the dangers of deception, the far-reaching consequences of corporate greed, and the resilience of the human spirit. It sparked important conversations about identity, trust, and the nature of truth in the modern world. In Carmel by the Sea, life gradually returned to normal, but the town was forever changed by the events that had unfolded. The case became part of the town's history, told to visitors and passed down through generations. As years went by, the once shocking tale of the vanishing groom became a legend, a story that encapsulated the complexities of human nature and the unpredictable twists of fate. It served as a reminder that sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction and that even in the most idyllic settings, darkness can lurk beneath the surface. The beaches of Carmel, with their golden sands and crashing waves, continued to attract visitors from around the world. Yet for those who knew the case, the picturesque scenery held a deeper meaning. It stood as a testament to the enduring mystery of the human heart and the secrets we all carry within us. In the end, the case of Michael Anderson and Olivia Blackwood remained a poignant reminder of the power of love, the weight of secrets, and the unexpected ways in which our lives can be forever altered by the choices we make. Their story, with all its twists and turns, became a modern-day epic of love and loss, deception and redemption, a tale that would be remembered long after the protagonists were gone. As the sun set over Carmel by the Sea, casting long shadows across the beach where Michael and Olivia had once walked hand in hand, the town settled into a peaceful quiet. The mystery that had defined it for so long had finally been laid to rest, but its legacy would live on. It served as a haunting reminder of the thin line between truth and deception and the enduring power of a love that defied all expectations. Thank you for joining us on this thrilling journey into the mysterious case of the vanishing groom. We hope this story has captivated your imagination and sparked curiosity about the complexities of human nature and the unpredictable twists of fate. Your support motivates us to continue bringing you compelling stories that explore the darker sides of human experience while also highlighting resilience and the pursuit of truth. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and remember that sometimes the most shocking secrets are hidden in plain sight. We look forward to welcoming you back for more intriguing tales in our upcoming videos. On October 15, 2021, police responded to a distress call from an apartment complex on Oak Street. What they discovered inside was a scene that would haunt them for years: the lifeless body of 32-year-old Ethan Reed, a cherished local high school teacher, sprawled in a pool of his own blood. The primary suspect in this case was his girlfriend of 2 years, 29-year-old Olivia Rogan, a software engineer. As the investigation unfolded, detectives uncovered a chilling pattern of surveillance, manipulation, and control that had entrapped Ethan in the months before his death. Hidden cameras strategically placed throughout his apartment revealed a disturbing story of paranoia and obsession. Olivia Rogan's journey toward becoming the focus of this tragic true crime story began long before she met Ethan Reed. Born in 1993 to Margaret and James Rogan, Olivia grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Portland. From a young age, people close to the family noticed Olivia's intense craving for attention and approval. Margaret Rogan, reflecting on her daughter's early years after Olivia's arrest, described her as a remarkably bright child, always excelling in her studies but struggling to build lasting friendships. "At first, I thought her shyness was the issue," Margaret said. "But as she grew older, I saw how possessive she became of her few friends. If they spent time with others, Olivia would retreat into herself and become moody." This pattern of behavior persisted into Olivia's teenage years. Her high school boyfriend, Alex Chen, later told investigators about Olivia's constant need to track his whereabouts. "She would call or text me incessantly when we weren't together," he explained. "If I didn't respond quickly enough, she'd appear wherever she thought I might be. At the time, I thought it was just because she cared so much." Despite these challenges, Olivia thrived academically. She graduated as her high school's valedictorian and pursued computer science at Stanford University. At Stanford, Olivia's controlling tendencies found a new outlet in technology. Her college roommate, Sarah Jennings, recalled Olivia's obsession with coding and surveillance software. "She was incredibly talented," Sarah said, "but sometimes it felt like she used her skills to keep track of everyone around her. She'd mention details about our classmates that she couldn't have known without some form of digital spying." After graduating with honors, Olivia secured a prestigious role at a tech startup. Her colleagues described her as dedicated and precise, often working long hours to perfect her code. Yet, her personal life was marked by tumultuous and short-lived relationships. Jason Tran, who dated Olivia for 6 months in 2019, described their relationship as overwhelming and stifling. "She wanted to know every detail about my day, my thoughts, my plans," he said. "When I tried to set limits, she'd become angry or manipulative. It was exhausting." By early 2020, Olivia had returned to Ashland, taking on a remote position with her company. She left behind a string of failed relationships, but no one could have anticipated the dark turn her life would take when she met Ethan Reed. Ethan's life was a sharp contrast to Olivia's troubled past. Born in 1990 in Ashland, Ethan was the youngest of 3 children in a close-knit family. His older sister, Amanda Reed, described their upbringing as idyllic. "We grew up surrounded by nature, spending summers hiking and winters skiing," she said. Ethan was always the peacemaker, the one who could make anyone smile. From a young age, Ethan displayed a love for learning and a natural ability to connect with others. His high school English teacher, Mrs. Elaine Hoffman, remembered him fondly. "Ethan had a special way of bringing out the best in his classmates," she said. "He was patient, kind, and had an infectious enthusiasm for literature. I always thought he'd be a wonderful teacher one day." Mrs. Hoffman's prediction proved accurate. After earning a degree in English literature from university, Ethan returned to his hometown to teach at Ashland High School. In his personal life, Ethan was known for his steady, long-term relationships. His college girlfriend, Laura Simmons, remained a close friend even after their amicable breakup. "Ethan was always so balanced," she said. "He valued his independence but was also incredibly loyal and supportive. We broke up because our careers were leading us in different directions, but it was never dramatic." The turning point came in May 2020, when Olivia Rogan and Ethan Reed met on a sunny Saturday afternoon at a local farmer's market. Olivia, still adjusting to her new environment, was out exploring. Ethan, a regular at the market, was there to pick up fresh produce for the week. Their eyes met across a stand of organic apples, and Ethan, ever the friendly local, struck up a conversation about the best varieties for baking. Olivia, charmed by his easygoing demeanor and warm smile, lingered at the stall far longer than she intended. As they chatted, they discovered a shared passion for classic literature and hiking. Impressed by Olivia's quick wit and intelligence, Ethan suggested they meet for a hike the following weekend. Olivia, feeling an instant connection, eagerly agreed. Their first date was a hike up to Grizzly Peak, which offered stunning views of the Rogue Valley. Ethan's friend Mark later noted that Ethan returned from the hike on cloud 9. He couldn't stop talking about how smart and funny Olivia was and how they talked for hours without a break, Mark said. In the weeks that followed, Olivia and Ethan's relationship quickly blossomed. They spent long evenings discussing books, sharing meals, and exploring the natural beauty of the southern area. To those around them, they seemed like a perfect match. However, even in the early days of their relationship, there were subtle hints of Olivia's possessive nature. Ethan's sister Amanda noticed that Olivia seemed to dominate his time. She'd call or text constantly when they weren't together, and she always had a reason why Ethan couldn't come to family gatherings without her, Amanda observed. Blinded by the excitement of new love, Ethan brushed off these early warning signs. When his friend Mark expressed concern about the intensity of the relationship, Ethan laughed it off. "She's just excited about us," he said. "It'll calm down once we're more settled." Little did Ethan know, this was only the beginning of a pattern that would increasingly isolate him from his life. By the fall of 2020, Olivia had nearly moved into Ethan's apartment, despite him never formally asking her to live there. She began to dominate every facet of his daily life, from his diet to how he spent his leisure time. Ethan's colleague and friend, Jessica Lawson, noticed noticeable changes in his behavior at work. He started declining invitations to after-school happy hours, a pastime he had previously enjoyed. When Jessica asked him about this shift, Ethan explained that Olivia wasn't comfortable with him being out late. Jessica found this explanation odd, especially since Olivia knew most of their colleagues and had even joined them a few times. Olivia's control extended to Ethan's social media presence. His usually active Facebook and Instagram profiles became noticeably quiet, with posts becoming rare and impersonal. When friends questioned him about this change, Ethan would dismiss it, claiming he was trying to be more private online. However, it was Olivia's efforts to isolate Ethan from his family that raised the most concern. Amanda Reed recalled a particularly troubling incident during the 2020 holiday season. "We always have a big family Christmas at our parents' house," she said. But that year, Ethan called at the last minute to say he and Olivia couldn't make it. When I pressed him, he said Olivia wasn't feeling well and he needed to stay with her, but I could hear her in the background sounding perfectly fine. Olivia employed various emotional manipulation tactics to maintain control over Ethan. She would alternate between showering him with affection and giving him the cold shoulder if he didn't comply with her demands. Ethan's friend Mark remembered a camping trip they had planned for months. The night before we were supposed to leave, Ethan called to cancel. He sounded defeated, saying Olivia was upset about him going away without her, even though she had been invited and had declined. As 2021 progressed, Olivia's behavior became increasingly erratic. She started accusing Ethan of cheating, despite having no proof to back her claims. She would appear unannounced at the high school, claiming she was bringing Ethan lunch, but her colleagues noticed that she seemed to be scanning the room for signs of inappropriate behavior. Ethan's student, Emma Chen, later testified to an unsettling encounter. "Miss Rogan came into our classroom during lunch break. Mr. Reed wasn't there, but she stayed anyway, asking us questions about him. It felt really strange and invasive." Despite mounting evidence of Olivia's controlling behavior, Ethan remained committed to their relationship. Those around him noticed his growing stress and anxiety, but he would deflect their concerns, often making excuses for Olivia's actions. His sister Amanda confronted him directly in the summer of 2021. "I told him I was worried that this relationship didn't seem healthy," she said. But he became defensive, insisting that I didn't understand Olivia. He said she had been hurt in the past and needed extra reassurance. He genuinely believed he could help her overcome her insecurities. As Olivia's paranoia and need for control reached new heights, she made a decision that would dramatically change the course of her relationship with Ethan, leading to its tragic end. In late August 2021, while Ethan was away at a weekend teaching conference, Olivia took the drastic step of installing hidden cameras throughout his apartment. This idea had been brewing in her mind for weeks. Her background in software engineering made the technical aspects of the plan achievable, and her growing suspicions about Ethan's fidelity gave her the justification she needed to put aside any moral concerns. Olivia carefully planned the operation, purchasing small high-definition cameras disguised as everyday items. A smoke detector, a phone charger, even a potted plant. She also set up advanced software that would allow her to access the camera feeds remotely from her laptop or phone. On the Friday afternoon that Ethan left for his conference, Olivia put her plan into action. She had a key to his apartment, supposedly for emergencies, which gave her unrestricted access. Over the next several hours, Olivia meticulously placed cameras in the living room, kitchen, bedroom, and even the bathroom, ensuring every corner of Ethan's private space was under surveillance. With the cameras set up and the software running, Olivia left the apartment, her heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and guilt. She convinced herself that this was a necessary step to alleviate her fears and fully trust Ethan. The initial days of monitoring brought no significant findings. Olivia observed Ethan going through his daily routine, grading papers, preparing lessons, and talking on the phone with his sister. Instead of easing her suspicions, the lack of incriminating evidence only intensified Olivia's paranoia. She fixated on minor details, such as why Ethan smiled at a text message or who he might have been waiting for outside the window. David Cho, Olivia's colleague, later noticed changes in her behavior at work during this period. She seemed distracted and was constantly checking her phone, he said. I caught a glimpse of her screen once, and it looked like a video feed, but she quickly closed it when she saw me looking. As days turned into weeks, Olivia's obsession with the camera feeds grew. She began neglecting her work, her sleep deteriorated, and her interactions with Ethan became increasingly strained as she struggled to keep her secret. One evening, while reaching for a book on his shelf, Ethan noticed that several volumes were slightly out of place. He distinctly remembered organizing them just days before. In the bathroom, his toiletries seemed rearranged, though he couldn't pinpoint exactly how. More unsettling were the times he felt as though he was being watched. He'd be grading papers in the living room and suddenly feel a chill on the back of his neck, as if someone's eyes were on him. Yet, when he looked up, he was alone. Jessica Lawson, Ethan's friend and fellow teacher, recalled a conversation they had during this period. He mentioned feeling on edge in his own home, she said. He laughed it off, saying it was probably just work stress, but I could tell it was really bothering him. Olivia's behavior added to Ethan's growing discomfort. She started making comments about his daily activities that she shouldn't have known about. Once, she mentioned liking a new coffee brand he'd bought, despite not having been to his apartment in days. Another time, she asked about a phone call he had with his mother, even though he was sure he hadn't mentioned it to her. When Ethan expressed confusion about these slip-ups, Olivia would quickly change the subject or offer vague explanations. You must have mentioned the coffee in passing, she'd say, or perhaps his mother had told her about the call. As his unease grew, Ethan began to question his own memories and perceptions. Am I just being paranoid? He wondered. Is the stress of work getting to me? Despite his efforts to rationalize the strange occurrences, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. He started paying closer attention to his surroundings, noting any changes or oddities in his apartment. He even considered confiding in his sister Amanda but hesitated, worried that his concerns might seem irrational or that he might be overreacting. The moment of revelation came on an October evening in 2021. Ethan had been grading papers late into the night, the soft glow of his laptop illuminating the living room. As he stretched and prepared to call it a night, his elbow accidentally knocked a small potted plant off the side table. The pot shattered on the hardwood floor, scattering soil and ceramic shards across the room. As Ethan knelt to clean up the mess, something caught his eye amid the debris, a tiny lens, no larger than a pencil eraser, glinting in the low light. His heart racing, Ethan carefully extracted the object from the soil. It was a miniature camera, expertly concealed within the base of the plant. The discovery sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. With trembling hands, he began a frantic search of his apartment. Over the next hour, he combed through his home, uncovering hidden cameras that confirmed his worst fears. Ethan's discovery of hidden cameras left him reeling. In the smoke detector, a picture frame, and even the showerhead, he found 6 more covertly placed devices. The weight of realizing his most personal moments had been monitored overwhelmed him. Suddenly, everything fell into place. Olivia's peculiar comments, her eerie knowledge of his daily life, and the unsettling feeling of being watched made a horrifying kind of sense. The woman he had loved and trusted had betrayed him in the most intimate way imaginable. In a daze, Ethan reached out to his sister Amanda, the one person he knew he could rely on. Even though it was past midnight, she picked up on the second ring, her concern palpable. "Ethan, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice laden with worry. Choking back tears, Ethan explained the disturbing revelation. Amanda, initially stunned, quickly shifted to anger on his behalf. "You need to get out of there," she urged. "Pack a bag and come to my place. We'll figure this out together." Torn between confronting Olivia and grappling with the betrayal, Ethan felt paralyzed. He was deeply hurt, struggling to reconcile the person he thought he knew with the reality of her invasive actions. Ultimately, Amanda's calm guidance helped him focus on what to do next. "Document everything," she advised. "Take pictures of the cameras and save any recordings. We'll go to the police in the morning." As dawn broke over Ashland, Ethan sat among the remnants of Olivia's surveillance setup, his phone buzzing with a text from her, "Good morning, babe. Sleep well." The irony of her casual tone stung sharply. Taking a deep breath, Ethan responded with a message that would trigger the final, tragic chapter of their relationship. "We need to talk. Come over as soon as you can." When Olivia arrived later that morning, her usual smile faltered at the sight of Ethan's stern expression and the disassembled cameras laid out before him. A heavy silence filled the room before Olivia's mask of composure cracked, tears welling in her eyes. "Ethan, I can explain," she began, her voice trembling. Ethan, maintaining a calm demeanor, outlined the betrayal and invasion of privacy with chilling clarity. Olivia's confidence evaporated as her deception was laid bare. In a desperate attempt to justify her actions, Olivia spoke of her insecurities and her fear of losing Ethan. She claimed that proving his faithfulness would help her feel secure in their relationship. Her explanations were frantic and imploring, but Ethan remained resolute. "I can't be with someone who would do this," he stated firmly. "We're done. I want you to leave." Olivia's demeanor shifted abruptly. Her tears dried up, replaced by a cold, angry glare. "You can't do this to me," she snapped. "We're perfect together. You're overreacting." As Ethan stood firm, Olivia's pleas turned to threats. She threatened to ruin his career by exposing embarrassing moments captured on camera. When those threats failed, she resorted to emotional manipulation, threatening self-harm if he left her. Despite her desperate measures, Ethan's resolve did not waver. He understood with painful clarity that their relationship could not recover from this betrayal. Realizing her tactics were futile, Olivia stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Ethan sank onto the couch, emotionally drained. Little did he know, Olivia's desperation was about to escalate into something far more dangerous. October 15, 2021, would become a day forever marked by tragedy. The day began normally, with no sign of the impending disaster. Ethan, still shaken from the confrontation, had called in sick to work. He spent the morning with Amanda, planning to file a police report about the hidden cameras. As evening approached, he decided to clear his head with a walk, leaving his phone behind to avoid any messages from Olivia. During his absence, Olivia made a final, fatal return to Ethan's apartment. Neighbors later reported seeing her enter the building with a determined look on her face. Using her key, she let herself in, her mind a tumult of anger, desperation, and twisted self-righteousness. When Ethan returned home around 7 p.m., he was startled to find Olivia waiting for him in the darkened living room. Her presence was both unexpected and alarming. "Olivia, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice trembling. Olivia's response was disturbingly calm. "We're going to fix this, Ethan," she said. "You'll see that we belong together." What followed was a heated argument that quickly spiraled out of control. Olivia alternated between pleading for another chance and hurling bitter accusations. Ethan, exasperated, demanded that she leave immediately. In a shocking turn, Olivia's fragile composure shattered. She pulled out a kitchen knife from Ethan's own drawer. The ensuing moments were a blur of violence and terror. Caught off guard, Ethan tried to reason with Olivia while backing away from the blade. Despite his attempts to disarm her without causing harm, Olivia's frenzied strength seemed nearly superhuman. Neighbors reported hearing shouting and breaking glass, with one calling 911. But help arrived too late. When the police finally broke into Ethan's apartment, they found him on the floor with multiple stab wounds, his life slipping away. Olivia sat beside him, the bloody knife still in her hand, staring blankly at the devastation she had caused. As paramedics rushed to save Ethan, Olivia offered no resistance when the police took her into custody. Her only repeated words were, "He was supposed to love me forever." Detective Sarah Angwin of the Ashland Police Department led the investigation, uncovering the full extent of Olivia's invasive surveillance. The evidence, digital records of monitoring and witness statements, painted a damning picture of obsession and premeditated violence. Ethan's family and friends were devastated, with Amanda struggling with guilt. "I knew something was wrong," she said tearfully. "I should have pushed harder, done more to get him away from her." As the investigation continued, more details of Olivia's troubled past emerged. Former colleagues and ex-boyfriends shared stories of her controlling behavior and emotional manipulation. Her parents, stunned by their daughter's actions, could only offer tearful apologies to Ethan's family. In court, the district attorney presented a thorough case, highlighting Olivia's obsessive behavior through surveillance footage. The defense focused on Olivia's mental state, arguing that her actions stemmed from a mental health crisis rather than premeditated murder. Olivia testified, her remorse mingled with rationalizations. Her lack of full understanding of her actions disturbed many in the courtroom. After a 2-week trial and 3 days of deliberation, the jury found Olivia guilty of first-degree murder. At sentencing, the judge delivered a scathing critique of Olivia's actions and sentenced her to life in prison without parole. As Ashland began to heal, the community reflected on the nature of love, trust, and the human capacity for both compassion and cruelty. The case served as a grim reminder of the importance of addressing toxic relationship dynamics before they lead to tragedy. Jaden Hartwell, a charming 45-year-old investment banker, and his wife Karen, a 42-year-old art gallery curator, were the picture of success and sophistication. Their large 5-bedroom house, complete with neatly trimmed lawns and high-end cars parked in the driveway, was the envy of everyone in their neighborhood. For 15 years, the Hartwells had been community leaders, known for hosting extravagant parties, generously supporting local charities, and being active members of the country club. Their 2 children, Penelope and Atticus, shone brightly in their private school and extracurricular activities. To the outside world, the Hartwells were living the American dream. But beneath their seemingly perfect life, trouble was brewing. By the spring of 2023, the facade started to crack, revealing a story of betrayal, illness, and revenge that would stun the entire community. What unfolded next made friends, family, and neighbors question everything they thought they knew about the Hartwells. Jaden and Karen's love story began in the fall of 2003 at Northwestern University. Jaden, a senior majoring in finance, first noticed Karen at a campus art exhibition. She was a junior studying art history, her eyes glowing with enthusiasm as she discussed a particularly striking abstract painting with a captivated audience. Intrigued by her intelligence and beauty, Jaden approached her once the crowd had dispersed. He stumbled over his words while introducing himself, but Karen was charmed by his genuine interest in her work and his quick wit. They ended up talking for hours that night, losing track of time as they discovered their mutual love for travel, fine dining, and classic literature. Their courtship was a whirlwind of romantic gestures and intellectual conversations. Jayden swept Karen off her feet with surprise picnics in the university's botanical gardens, late-night study sessions that evolved into deep talks about their dreams, and weekend excursions to explore the city's vibrant art scene. After graduation, Jayden secured a prestigious job at an investment firm while Karen pursued her master's degree in art curation. Despite their demanding schedules, their relationship continued to thrive. They celebrated each other's successes and offered support during setbacks. In the spring of 2008, Jayden proposed to Karen atop the Willis Tower at sunset. He had arranged a private dinner in the sky deck, surrounded by the sparkling city lights they both adored. Overwhelmed with emotion, Karen said yes without hesitation. Their wedding, held the following year at the Botanical Garden, was a grand event that perfectly combined Jayden's love for luxury with Karen's artistic flair. Friends and family commented on how perfectly matched the couple seemed. The early years of their marriage were filled with joy and ambition. They worked hard, saving money and advancing their careers. Jayden climbed the corporate ladder with determination, while Karen made a name for herself in the competitive art world. In 2011, they welcomed their daughter, Penelope, followed by their son, Atticus, 2 years later. Parenthood brought new challenges, but also strengthened their bond. They faced sleepless nights and diaper duties together, their love growing stronger with each passing day. To everyone who knew them, Jayden and Karen Hartwell appeared to be the ideal couple destined for lifelong happiness. However, as time went on and the Hartwells' success continued to grow, subtle changes started to emerge in their relationship. The first signs of trouble appeared around 2018, coinciding with a significant promotion for Jayden. His new role as vice president at his firm came with a substantial salary increase but also demanded more of his time and attention. Karen, who had scaled back her work at the gallery to focus on their children, found herself feeling increasingly isolated. The intimate dinners and weekend getaways that once defined their relationship became infrequent. Jayden's frequent absences were often attributed to late nights at the office and business trips. At first, Karen tried to be understanding. She threw herself into volunteer work and focused on the children's activities, convincing herself that Jayden's dedication to his career was for the family's benefit. However, as months turned into years, she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed between them. Friends began to notice the strain. At social gatherings, Jayden and Karen no longer seemed drawn to each other as they once had. Their playful interactions were replaced by polite, almost distant exchanges. Karen's smile, once radiant in Jayden's presence, now appeared forced and fragile. Karen attempted to mend the growing rift by planning romantic evenings and family outings, but Jayden always seemed distracted, his mind elsewhere. When she voiced her concerns, he brushed them off, insisting everything was fine and that he was simply under a lot of pressure at work. As 2022 drew to a close, Karen's uneasy feeling grew stronger. Something was wrong, and it went beyond the normal stresses of a busy life. Little did she know, the true extent of the problems in her marriage was about to come to light in the most devastating way possible. The seeds of destruction for the Hartwell marriage were sown on a crisp autumn evening in September 2022. Jayden attended a charity gala at the Art Institute, an event where his wife would typically be by his side. But with Karen at home caring for their ill son, Atticus, Jayden had to go alone. It was here that he first encountered Viviana Rees, a 32-year-old rising star in the financial world who had recently joined a competing firm. Viviana was everything Karen wasn't: young, driven, and free from family obligations. Her elegant black dress and self-assured presence immediately grabbed Jayden's attention. They ended up seated at the same dinner table, and as the night went on, Jayden found himself drawn to Viviana's sharp mind and deep understanding of finance. Their conversation flowed smoothly, shifting from market trends to personal stories. For the first time in years, Jayden felt a spark of excitement, reminiscent of the enthusiasm he had once known in his youth. When the gala ended, they exchanged business cards, lingering a bit too long as their fingers touched. Jayden tried to convince himself it was just a professional interest, but thoughts of Viviana stayed with him long after he got home. In the weeks that followed, Jaden and Viviana started meeting regularly under the pretext of networking and exploring potential collaborations between their firms. Coffee meetings turned into working lunches and then into after-work drinks. Each time, Jaden found himself sharing more about his personal life, including his frustrations at home and the pressures of his job. Viviana, intrigued by Jaden's power and success, saw him as a potential mentor and maybe something more. She offered sympathy and support that Jaden felt was missing from his life. The line between work and personal life began to blur. A late-night strategy session at Viviana's apartment led to their first kiss. Overwhelmed by desire and the thrill of the forbidden, Jaden crossed a line he hadn't thought he would. Driving home that night, he felt a mix of guilt and exhilaration. He promised himself it would be a one-time mistake and that he would end it right away. However, as days went by, he found himself unable to stay away from Viviana. What started as a chance encounter was quickly turning into a full-blown affair, with serious consequences for everyone involved. In January 2023, while Jaden's affair with Viviana was intensifying, Karen received news that would rock her world. What she initially thought were symptoms of fatigue and stress turned out to be something much more serious. After a series of tests and a biopsy, Karen was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. When she got the diagnosis, Karen sat alone in the sterile exam room, her mind reeling as the oncologist explained her treatment options. She felt numb, barely able to grasp the details about chemotherapy, radiation, and survival rates. All she wanted was her husband's support, but Jaden was unreachable, his phone going straight to voicemail. When Karen finally managed to tell Jaden that evening, his reaction was a mix of shock and what she perceived as emotional detachment. He held her as she cried, murmuring comforting words, but she felt he was mentally elsewhere. She attributed his distance to the stress of the diagnosis, never suspecting the real reason for his distraction. The following weeks were a whirlwind of doctor's appointments and decisions. Karen threw herself into researching treatment options and finding support groups, determined to face her battle with courage. Jaden attended appointments and helped with the kids, but there was a noticeable tension between them. Inside, Jaden was plagued by guilt. The timing of Karen's illness was especially difficult, coming just as his affair with Viviana was becoming more intense. He felt torn between his duties to his wife and his growing feelings for his mistress. The strain of managing his double life while supporting Karen began to take its toll. As Karen prepared for her first round of chemotherapy, she sought emotional support from Jaden, hoping to reconnect with her husband during this challenging time. But the man she once saw as her rock now seemed distant and unreachable. Little did she know, the worst of his betrayal was yet to be revealed. As winter gave way to spring, Jaden Hartwell was living two completely separate lives. By day, he was the supportive husband, accompanying Karen to chemotherapy sessions, managing the household, and maintaining a facade of normalcy for their children. By night, he was Viviana's passionate lover, escaping into a world of excitement and freedom from family responsibilities. The guilt from his infidelity, combined with Karen's illness, gnawed at Jaden. He threw himself into his work with renewed energy, using it as an excuse to avoid confronting the reality of his actions. Late nights at the office became his refuge, a place to escape from his choices. Karen, weakened by her treatments and focused on her recovery, initially thought Jaden's absences were due to the demands of his job and the stress of her illness. She relied heavily on her sister Imogen and a close group of friends who supported her during this difficult period. They provided the emotional support that seemed to be missing from Jaden, although none of them voiced their concerns about his behavior. Meanwhile, Viviana grew increasingly impatient with the limits of their relationship. She pressed Jaden for more of his time and attention, hinting at a future together. Jaden, unable to fully commit but reluctant to let her go, promised her a vacation together once things calmed down at home. As Karen's treatment progressed, the strain on the family became evident. Penelope, now 12, became withdrawn and sullen, struggling with her mother's illness and her father's frequent absences. 9-year-old Atticus developed anxiety, clinging to Karen and breaking down easily. The once happy home became a place of tension and unspoken resentment. Friends and neighbors began to notice the shift in the Hartwell family dynamic. Whispers spread at school pickups and neighborhood gatherings. Some speculated about the impact of Karen's illness, while others wondered if there were problems in the marriage. Jayden's coworker, Dominic F.A., had seen him dining with Viviana at a restaurant across town. However, he chose to keep his suspicions to himself, not wanting to add to the family's troubles. As summer approached, Jayden found himself precariously balancing his responsibilities at work, at home, and with Viviana. His performance was slipping in all areas. He was irritable, distracted, and prone to mood swings. Despite her frail condition, Karen sensed that something was fundamentally wrong but was too exhausted to confront him directly. The breaking point was nearing, and it would come in a way none of them could have foreseen. As Jayden arranged his escape with Viviana, he had no inkling that his meticulously crafted facade was about to crumble. When July 2023 arrived, bringing with it a sweltering heat wave, Jayden made a decision that would irreversibly impact his life and those around him. With Karen's chemotherapy treatments continuing through the summer, Jayden claimed he needed to take a business trip to finalize an important deal in the Cayman Islands. Karen, pale and drained from her latest round of treatment, accepted this news with a weak nod. She was too fatigued to question the timing or necessity of the trip, simply asking him to call regularly to check on her and the children. Jayden felt a pang of guilt as he looked at his wife, but it wasn't enough to sway him from his plans. In truth, there was no business deal. Jayden had arranged a week-long romantic retreat with Viviana, using his connections to book a luxurious private villa on a secluded beach. As he packed his bags, tucking gifts for Viviana among his clothes, he rationalized his actions. He convinced himself that he deserved this break, that the stress of recent months justified a bit of happiness. When Jayden and Viviana arrived at their tropical paradise, they abandoned all caution. They spent their days lounging on the beach, sipping cocktails, and indulging in gourmet meals. Their nights were filled with passion, both savoring the freedom to be together openly. Jayden pushed thoughts of Karen and the kids to the back of his mind, immersing himself entirely in the fantasy of a life with Viviana. Back home, Karen's condition worsened. The side effects of her latest treatment left her bedridden and feverish. Imogen moved in temporarily to assist with the children and Karen's care. Frustrated by Jayden's absence, she repeatedly tried to contact him, but his phone remained unanswered. It was Penelope, inadvertently, who set the events in motion that would reveal Jayden's betrayal. Concerned about her mother and angered by her father's absence, she decided to use the emergency credit card Jayden had given her to order flowers for Karen. When the card was declined, Penelope called customer service, pretending to be Karen to inquire about recent transactions. The customer service representative, deceived by Penelope's act, disclosed a list of charges from the Cayman Islands, luxury restaurants, high-end boutiques, and a jewelry store. Distressed and confused, Penelope shared this information with Imogen. With her suspicions confirmed, Imogen decided to take action. She hired a private investigator who quickly uncovered the truth about Jayden's supposed business trip and his ongoing affair with Viviana. Armed with this information, Imogen sat down with Karen to reveal the extent of her husband's betrayal. With gentle words but unwavering honesty, she shared the evidence collected by the investigator, photos of Jayden and Viviana together in the Cayman Islands, records of extravagant purchases, and time-stamped footage of them entering and leaving their villa. Karen listened in stunned silence, gripping the arm of her chair as the full scope of Jayden's deceit became clear. A wave of emotions, shock, anger, humiliation, washed over her, ultimately solidifying her resolve. Once Imogen finished, Karen remained quiet for a long moment before, with a steadiness she didn't quite feel, asking, "What do we do now?" Imogen, relieved that her sister's response was not one of despair, replied, "Whatever you decide, I'm here for you." With her sister's steadfast support and the harsh truth laid out before her, Karen began to devise her plan for revenge. She refused to let cancer or her husband's betrayal define her. Instead, she resolved to take control of her own story and secure her future on her own terms. As Karen processed the devastating reality of Jayden's infidelity, she underwent a profound transformation. The initial shock and heartbreak quickly gave way to a cold, calculated anger. Despite her physical frailty, Karen's mind sharpened with purpose. She recognized that while cancer threatened her life, Jaden had chosen to destroy their marriage. During the quiet hours of the night, as her children slept and Imogen kept vigil, Karen began to plan. She refused to be a victim, neither of cancer nor of her husband's betrayal. With a clarity she hadn't felt in months, Karen decided to take control of her future, starting with the financial security Jaden had so recklessly jeopardized. The next morning, Karen contacted Ezra Cruz, a shrewd divorce attorney known for his aggressive approach to high-profile cases. In a private consultation, Ezra outlined Karen's options, explaining that she had a strong case for a favorable settlement. However, Karen had her own ideas. With Ezra's reluctant guidance and Imogen's unwavering support, Karen set her plan into motion. She began by meticulously documenting Jaden's affair and his abandonment during her illness. Then, she reached out to her former contacts in the art world, discreetly inquiring about quick private sales for several valuable pieces from their collection. The most crucial and risky part of her plan involved their joint assets. Using the power of attorney Jaden had granted her for emergencies, Karen started the process of liquidating their accounts. She worked tirelessly, making calculated moves to convert their investments into cash without raising immediate alarms. Fueled by a mix of righteous anger and newfound determination to secure her children's future, Karen set up new accounts in her name only, transferring funds with precision. The family's vacation home in Michigan was quietly put on the market and sold to a cash buyer within days. Throughout this whirlwind of activity, Karen maintained the outward appearance of a woman focused solely on her health. She continued her treatments, attended support group meetings, and managed to maintain a normal routine for Penelope and Atticus. Only Imogen knew the full extent of Karen's actions, serving as both confidant and accomplice in her sister's bold plan. As the days passed and Jaden's return drew near, Karen felt a grim satisfaction. She had regained control in the most profound way possible. Now, all that remained was to wait for the man who had betrayed her to come home and face the consequences of his actions. On a sunny Saturday afternoon in late July, Jaden Hartwell returned from his Cayman Islands trip, tanned and relaxed. As he pulled into the driveway of their Riverton mansion, he felt a twinge of guilt, knowing he would have to resume his role as devoted husband and father. Little did he know that his carefully constructed double life was about to implode. Entering the unusually quiet house, Jaden called out for Karen and the children. The silence that greeted him was unsettling. He made his way to the kitchen, where he found a thick manila envelope on the counter, his name written in Karen's elegant script. With growing apprehension, Jaden opened the envelope. Inside, he found divorce papers and a letter from Karen detailing her knowledge of his affair and his absence during her cancer treatments. The final paragraph of the letter informed him that she had liquidated their joint assets, taking what she deemed her fair share after years of supporting his career and raising their family. As panic set in, Jaden rushed to his home office and attempted to log into their online banking accounts, only to find access denied. Jaden immediately reached out to his investment manager, only to be informed that most of their portfolio had been liquidated over the past week. The vacation home was sold, and their valuable art collection was gone. As the gravity of his situation hit him, Jaden slumped into his leather office chair, his mind spinning. His phone buzzed with a message from Viviana, inquiring about their plans for the upcoming weekend. Jaden stared at the screen, realizing that the life he had once desired now seemed empty and misguided compared to everything he had lost. At that moment, he heard the front door open, followed by footsteps approaching his office. The steps were too heavy to be Karen's. The door swung open to reveal Imogen, her face a mask of icy fury. Jaden understood immediately that she was here to ensure he fully grasped the extent of his errors and the consequences that were just beginning to unfold. Special Agent Vega from the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division was assigned to investigate the case. Her team embarked on a thorough examination of the Hartwell's assets, searching for signs of fraudulent activity or money laundering. They uncovered a detailed network of transactions, all meticulously documented and, surprisingly, entirely legal. Karen had used her power of attorney within her rights, and her actions were carefully kept within legal boundaries. However, the investigation did expose questionable financial practices on Jaden's part. His expense accounts revealed a pattern of extravagant spending that extended well beyond his trip with Viviana. There were irregular cash withdrawals, undeclared gifts, and indications of attempts to conceal assets offshore. As Agent Vega delved further, she discovered connections between Jayden and several companies that had recently been under investigation for insider trading. Although Jayden was not directly implicated, the evidence suggested that he had been treading a thin ethical line in his professional dealings. By the spring of 2024, nearly a year after the Hartwell family's downfall, the case finally went to trial. Jayden's attorneys tried to portray Karen as a vindictive woman who had overreacted to a minor indiscretion, illegally seizing assets in a fit of jealousy. They argued that her actions had not only ruined Jayden's life but had also negatively impacted their children and potentially jeopardized client funds at his firm. Karen's legal team, led by the sharp-eyed Ezra Cruz, methodically dismantled this argument. They presented evidence of Jayden's long-term affair, his neglect during Karen's cancer treatment, and the documented trail of his own financial misdeeds. Witnesses, including Imogen and several of Jayden's former colleagues, testified about his erratic behavior and ethical lapses leading up to the revelation of his infidelity. The most damning testimony came from Viviana Rees, who, in exchange for immunity, exposed the full extent of her relationship with Jayden. She detailed his promises to leave Karen and his dismissive remarks about his wife's illness. As the trial progressed, it became clear that the case had evolved beyond a mere divorce proceeding. The judge had to consider not only the dissolution of the marriage but also the potential criminal aspects of Jayden's financial dealings. After weeks of dramatic testimony and skillful legal maneuvering, the court prepared to deliver its verdict. Jayden was found guilty of multiple financial crimes and was sentenced to 3 years in a minimum security prison. Hi everyone, today I'm diving into a chilling true crime story that unfolded on a scorching July afternoon in 2019. The peaceful suburb of Riverside was torn apart in a way that would leave a lasting mark on the community for years to come. At the heart of this tragedy were the Hendersons. Thaddeus, a 45-year-old investment banker known for his dedication to work and community, and his wife, Margot, a 43-year-old part-time yoga instructor celebrated for her vibrant personality and infectious laugh. They had been well established in the neighborhood for over a decade, with their seemingly perfect marriage often admired by others. Next door lived the Coopers. Elaine, a widow, and her 19-year-old son, Liam, who was home from college for the summer. The Coopers had moved in 5 years earlier. Though they kept to themselves more than most, they were generally well regarded by their neighbors. No one could have anticipated that these ordinary lives would intersect in such a disastrous manner. Thaddeus Henderson was a man driven by ambition. Growing up in rural Iowa with working-class parents, he had climbed the social ladder through relentless determination and a near-obsessive work ethic. By his early 30s, he had made a name for himself as a promising talent at a financial firm. His colleagues admired his sharp analytical skills, while his clients valued his straightforward approach to wealth management. Margot Sinclair, as she was known before marrying Thaddeus, had a different background. She was the daughter of a college professor and an artist, and she grew up in an environment that cherished creativity and self-expression. Margot studied modern dance at university, dreaming of a career on stage. However, a knee injury during her senior year forced her to abandon those dreams and shift her focus to yoga and wellness coaching. Their paths first crossed at a charity gala in 2003. Thaddeus, though successful, was socially awkward and immediately captivated by Margot's lively and charming demeanor. For Margot, Thaddeus represented stability and the promise of a secure future that would allow her to follow her passions without financial concerns. They married a year later in a grand ceremony that was the talk of their social circle. The early years of their marriage were filled with happiness. Thaddeus's career continued to soar, and he took great pride in providing Margot with the life he felt she deserved. In turn, Margot embraced her role as the perfect corporate wife, hosting dinner parties and attending social events crucial for Thaddeus's networking. She also began teaching yoga part-time at an upscale studio, finding fulfillment in helping others achieve balance and inner peace. But as time went on, cracks began to show in their meticulously crafted life. Thaddeus's work hours grew longer, driven by his ambition to secure ever larger deals and clients. He was rarely home before 9 p.m., and even when he was, his mind was often elsewhere, constantly checking his phone for emails or market updates. Margot, approaching her 40s, felt increasingly restless. The yoga classes and charity committees that once energized her now felt unfulfilling. She began to question whether she had sacrificed her dreams for a life of luxury that felt like a gilded cage. The couple struggled to conceive a child despite years of trying added another layer of tension to their relationship. By the summer of 2019, their marriage was a carefully crafted facade. To the outside world, they still appeared to be the golden couple. Thaddeus continued to excel at work, recently closing a deal that positioned him for a partnership, while Margot's yoga classes thrived, attracting students drawn to her warmth and apparent serenity. Yet, behind closed doors, they had become virtual strangers. Their conversations, when they happened, were mundane and focused on schedules and social obligations. Physical intimacy had become infrequent, each touch burdened with unspoken resentments and unmet expectations. Neither Thaddeus nor Margot was willing to acknowledge, even to themselves, how far apart they had drifted. It was easier to maintain the illusion of a happy marriage than to confront the emptiness that had settled between them. Little did they know, this unspoken rift in their relationship was about to become the catalyst for a tragedy that would not only shatter their lives but also deeply impact the entire community of Riverside. The Coopers had moved into the house next door to the Hendersons in 2014, following the death of Elaine's husband. Elaine Cooper's husband, Dr. Reginald Cooper, was a respected oncologist who had dedicated his life to fighting cancer. Tragically, Reginald succumbed to the very disease he had battled, leaving Elaine to raise their son, Liam, alone. Elaine, a soft-spoken librarian, had initially struggled to adapt to life in their new community. Moving from their modest home in St. Paul was necessary to escape the painful memories that lingered in every corner of their old house. However, the affluent suburb felt unfamiliar and daunting to her. She found comfort in her books and tended to a garden that soon became the envy of the neighborhood. When the Coopers moved in, Liam was 14, an introverted, lanky teenager who was more comfortable with computers than with people. The transition to a new school was challenging, and he often faced bullying due to his second-hand clothes and reserved nature. During this tough period, Thaddeus Henderson extended a helping hand to Liam, offering him a job mowing lawns and doing odd jobs around the neighborhood. Over the next 5 years, Liam transformed from an awkward teen into a confident young man. His natural intelligence found a channel in his studies of computer science at the university. Despite his growing confidence, Liam remained deeply devoted to his mother. He worried about her loneliness and made a point to come home most weekends, even when his friends were planning parties or road trips. It was during one of these weekend visits in early June that Liam encountered Margot Henderson in a new light. Elaine had always been appreciative of the Hendersons' kindness, especially Margot's efforts to involve her in neighborhood activities. She often spoke highly of Margot's generosity, unaware of the complex emotions simmering beneath the surface of her son's polite responses. The spark that ignited the affair between Margot Henderson and Liam Cooper was both unexpected and intense. It happened on a warm evening in early June, during one of the Hendersons' famous summer barbecues. Thaddeus, as usual, was entertaining guests near the grill, regaling them with stories of his latest financial successes. Margot, feeling particularly isolated amidst the crowd, retreated to the quiet of the pool house to replenish the ice bucket. Liam, reluctantly dragged to the party by his mother, sought refuge from the noise and forced socializing. He entered the pool house without realizing it was occupied and found Margot struggling with a large bag of ice. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something shifted between them. Liam moved to help her with the ice, their hands brushing briefly. They stood there, momentarily frozen, with the cold of the ice contrasting sharply with the heat growing between them. Margot broke the silence with a husky voice as she thanked him. Liam, usually so articulate, found himself stumbling over his words in response. This brief encounter set the stage for what was to come. Over the next few weeks, Margot and Liam began finding excuses to spend time together. It started innocently enough, Margot asking Liam to help with her laptop and Liam offering to assist in her garden. Each interaction was tinged with an undercurrent of attraction they both tried to ignore. Their first kiss happened almost a month after the barbecue. Liam had been helping Margot set up for a yoga class in the park when a sudden summer storm hit. They ran for shelter under a nearby gazebo, laughing and breathless as the rain poured down around them. In that moment, Margot felt a surge of desire she hadn't experienced in years. Before she could think better of it, she leaned in and kissed Liam. From that point on, their affair escalated quickly. Driven by a combination of Liam's youthful passion and Margot's desperate need to feel alive again, they began meeting in secluded spots around town. They found refuge in the back row of the local cinema, a hidden corner of the public library, and most dangerously, in the Henderson home while Thaddeus was at work. Each encounter left them craving more, their age difference forgotten in the heat of their stolen moments. Margot felt rejuvenated, rediscovering parts of herself she thought were lost. Liam was intoxicated by Margot's experience and the thrill of their forbidden relationship. As the summer progressed, the strain of keeping their secret started to show. Close calls became more frequent, neighbors nearly catching them in an embrace, and suspicious glances from Elaine when Margot's name came up too often in conversation. The guilt weighed heavily on both of them. Liam struggled with the knowledge that he was betraying Thaddeus, a man who had shown him nothing but kindness. Margot found herself lying more frequently to her husband, each deception another crack in the foundation of her marriage. Despite the risks and the guilt, neither Liam nor Margot could bring themselves to end the affair. They were trapped in a whirlwind of passion and need, blind to the devastating consequences that loomed on the horizon. On July 15, 2019, the day dawned hot and humid, with the air heavy with the promise of an approaching storm. It was a Monday, and Riverside began its day as its residents prepared for another week of work and routine. For Thaddeus Henderson, it began like any other day. He rose early, donned one of his impeccably tailored suits, and left for the office before Margot had even stirred from sleep. Margot woke later, her mind already racing with plans for the day. Thaddeus had informed her the night before that he would be working late for a crucial client dinner that could secure his partnership deal. For Margot, this presented an opportunity. She texted Liam, her heart racing as she suggested he come over in the afternoon. Liam, who had been wrestling with his feelings about the affair, saw the message as a chance to end things face to face. He replied with a simple okay, resolving to break it off before the situation spiraled further out of control. The day dragged on for both of them. Margot went through the motions of her morning yoga class, her usual serenity replaced by a nervous energy that her students couldn't help but notice. At his summer job, Liam found it increasingly difficult to concentrate on the lines of code on his screen. His mind kept drifting to thoughts of Margot and the conversation they were scheduled to have at 2:30 p.m. Nervous and preoccupied, he made his way next door, glancing around to make sure no neighbors were watching. Margot quickly ushered him inside, her face flushed with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Liam began to speak, intending to address the need for a serious conversation, but Margot, misinterpreting his words and driven by a desperate need to feel desired, interrupted him with a passionate kiss. Despite his reservations, Liam found himself responding, his resolve weakening in the face of Margot's intensity. What followed was a blur of discarded clothes and tangled limbs as they made their way to the master bedroom. All thoughts of ending the affair were temporarily forgotten as they lost themselves in each other. Meanwhile, across town, Thaddeus Henderson was at his office, frowning at his computer screen. The numbers for his client presentation weren't adding up, and he realized he would have to redo a significant portion of his work. Frustration mounting, he decided to go home, regroup, and return later to finish up before the dinner. At 3:45 p.m., as Thaddeus's car pulled into the driveway, he noticed Liam Cooper's beat-up Honda parked down the street. He thought nothing of it, assuming Liam was helping Elaine with some errand. Unlocking the front door, Thaddeus found the house unusually quiet. A half-empty glass of wine on the coffee table seemed out of place for Margot at this hour. He then heard a muffled sound coming from upstairs. Frowning, he climbed the stairs, the noise growing louder as he approached the master bedroom. What Thaddeus saw when he opened the door would be etched into his memory forever. His wife, the woman he had loved for 15 years, was in their bed with Liam Cooper, the 19-year-old he had mentored and trusted. In a roar of rage and pain, Thaddeus lunged forward, his hands, accustomed to manipulating numbers and sealing business deals, now clenched into fists. He grabbed Liam, yanking him off the bed. Margot screamed, scrambling to cover herself and separate the two men, but her efforts were futile. Thaddeus's first punch landed squarely on Liam's jaw, sending him stumbling backward. Driven by adrenaline and fear, Liam fought back. The two men grappled, crashing into the dresser and sending framed photos and trinkets scattering across the floor. In the chaos, no one noticed the heavy crystal bookend that fell from the dresser. It wasn't until Thaddeus, in a fit of blind rage, seized it and brought it down on Liam's head with a sickening thud. The sound echoed in the sudden silence that followed. Liam crumpled to the floor, blood pooling rapidly around his motionless form. Margot's scream pierced the air as the full horror of the situation hit everyone. As storm clouds gathered outside and sirens wailed in the distance, the lives of those involved were irrevocably changed. The idyllic facade of Riverside had been shattered, and nothing would ever be the same. The piercing wail of police sirens shattered the usual tranquility of the community. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains, their curiosity mingling with apprehension as squad cars and an ambulance screeched to a halt in front of the Henderson residence. The first officers on the scene were met with a tableau of horror that would haunt them for years to come. Inside, they found a shell-shocked Thaddeus Henderson, his hands covered in blood, sitting on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. Margot, barely clothed and hysterical, stood amidst the overturned furniture, shattered glass, and smears of blood on the hardwood floor. Detective Ava Rossi, a veteran of the homicide unit, took charge of the scene. Her first priority was securing medical attention for Liam Cooper. As paramedics worked feverishly to stabilize him, Rossi began piecing together the events leading up to the tragedy. Thaddeus, still in shock, was taken into custody without resistance. Margot was separately questioned, and their fragmented, emotional stories painted a picture of long-simmering marital discord that had exploded into violence. As word spread through the neighborhood, a crowd gathered at the police cordon. Among them was Elaine Cooper, who collapsed in grief upon learning of her son's critical condition. She was quickly whisked away to the hospital, where Liam was fighting for his life in the intensive care unit. The investigation moved swiftly. Forensics teams combed through the Henderson home, collecting evidence and photographing the scene. The crystal bookend, now a potential murder weapon, was carefully bagged and tagged. Neighbors were interviewed, adding context to the relationships between the Hendersons and the Coopers. One neighbor recalled hearing raised voices from the Henderson house earlier but dismissed it as a loud television. Another noted seeing Liam enter the Henderson home around 2:30 p.m., finding it unusual given Thaddeus's typical work schedule. As night fell, the gravity of the situation became clear. Liam Cooper was pronounced dead at 9:47 p.m., never having regained consciousness. The charge against Thaddeus Henderson was elevated from assault to second-degree murder. In the days that followed, more details emerged. Margot, racked with guilt and facing intense scrutiny, admitted to the affair with Liam. Her statement, given through tears at the police station, outlined their relationship and the events leading up to that fateful afternoon. Thaddeus, advised by his hastily retained attorney, remained silent. However, his colleagues painted a picture of a man under immense pressure, working long hours in pursuit of a partnership that had seemed within reach. Despite the mounting evidence and the case against Thaddeus Henderson steadily building, no one could have anticipated the depth of his marital problems or the extent of the violence that had erupted. Detective Ava Rossi was well aware that in the court of public opinion, this story would not have clear-cut heroes or villains. Instead, it would be a tale of victims, each caught in their own web of secrets and lies, which had tragically culminated in the most devastating way possible. But even as the case unfolded, an unexpected twist was about to emerge, one that would shock everyone, including the Hendersons. The trial began on a crisp autumn morning, 6 months after the catastrophic events that had rocked Riverside. The county courthouse, with its stately red brick facade and white columns, was swarmed by reporters and curious onlookers. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with tension as the judge called the court to order. Prosecuting attorney Veronica Talbot, renowned for her sharp intellect and even sharper tongue, laid out the state's case with precision. In her opening statement, she painted a vivid portrait of Thaddeus Henderson as a man consumed by rage and jealousy, who had brutally ended the life of a young man in the prime of his existence. Talbot's words, though measured, were impactful, her gaze sweeping across the jury as she vowed to prove Henderson's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. In response, defense attorney Sterling took the stand with a contrasting narrative. He portrayed Thaddeus as a devoted husband and a respected member of the community who had been pushed to the brink by a betrayal of the gravest kind. Sterling suggested that the tragic death was the result of a confrontation that had spiraled out of control rather than a premeditated act of violence. As the trial progressed, a parade of witnesses took the stand. Forensic experts testified about blood spatter patterns and the force required to inflict Liam's fatal injury. Neighbors recounted their observations of that fateful day, and character witnesses spoke to the reputations and personalities of both Thaddeus and Liam. However, it was Margot Henderson's testimony that truly captivated the courtroom. Over the course of 2 grueling days on the stand, she laid bare the disintegration of her marriage and the development of her relationship with Liam. Her voice trembled as she recounted the moment Thaddeus had walked in on them and the horror of witnessing the confrontation unfold. Under cross-examination, Sterling attempted to portray her as an unfaithful wife whose actions had driven her husband to temporary insanity. Despite this, Margot remained steadfast, accepting responsibility for her part in the tragedy but maintaining that nothing could justify Liam's death. Elaine Cooper's testimony, though brief, was profoundly moving. Still grieving, she spoke of her son's kindness and his dreams, all tragically cut short by an act of violence. Her quiet dignity in the face of such unimaginable loss touched many in the courtroom, bringing several to tears. As the trial approached its conclusion, all eyes turned to Thaddeus Henderson. Against his lawyer's advice, he chose to take the stand himself. His testimony was a study in contrasts, marked by moments of apparent remorse interspersed with flashes of the anger that had led to Liam's death. Thaddeus spoke of the intense pressure he had been under at work, the growing distance in his marriage, and the shock of discovering his wife's infidelity. When describing the altercation with Liam, he claimed he had never intended to cause serious harm, explaining that he had simply lost control in the heat of the moment. As the trial continued, expert witnesses from the field of psychology were called to provide insight into the minds of those involved in the tragic events. Dr. Cho explained that Thaddeus's actions could be understood through the lens of what psychologists term intermittent explosive disorder, characterized by episodes of violent and aggressive behavior disproportionate to the situation. She highlighted Thaddeus's high-stress job, his unexpressed marital dissatisfaction, and the shock of discovering his wife's infidelity as contributing factors to his violent outburst. However, under cross-examination, Dr. Cho conceded that while these factors could help explain Thaddeus's behavior, they did not excuse it. She emphasized that many individuals face similar stressors without resorting to violence. The defense also called a specialist in marriage and family therapy to testify about the psychological impact of infidelity. Fredman described the profound sense of betrayal and loss of identity that can result from discovering a spouse's affair. He likened it to a form of psychological trauma capable of triggering extreme emotional responses. The psychological analyses presented during the trial offered a complex picture of human behavior and motivation, underscoring how a combination of personal history, societal expectations, and immediate circumstances can converge to create a perfect storm of tragedy. After 7 grueling weeks of testimony, evidence presentation, and legal arguments, the fate of Thaddeus Henderson rested in the hands of the jury. As Judge Blackwell sent the 12 jurors to deliberate, a tense silence fell over the courtroom. Following a short recess to consider all factors, Judge Blackwell returned to deliver her sentence. She cited the violent nature of the crime but also balanced it against Thaddeus's lack of prior criminal history and the unique circumstances of the case. Consequently, she sentenced him to 18 years in state prison with the possibility of parole after 12 years. As Thaddeus was led away in handcuffs, the full weight of the tragedy seemed to descend upon the courtroom. There were no victors in this case, only lives irrevocably altered by a moment of passion and a split second of violence. Outside, as news of the verdict spread, the crowd's reactions were mixed. Some felt that justice had been served, while others argued that the sentence was either too harsh or too lenient. But all agreed on one point: the events that had unfolded in Riverside would leave an indelible mark on the community for years to come. Welcome to another episode of Crime Insight. Today's episode takes us to Fort Collins, Colorado, in May of 2019. This is the story of a beloved teacher's tragic end and how her husband's jealous obsession turned deadly. Dr. Vivian Severn was a 42-year-old English professor at a local college in Fort Collins. Known for her charismatic and engaging teaching style, Vivian was a passionate expert in British interwar literature. Her enthusiasm for the subject was matched only by her commitment to her students. She frequently invited them to her home for extended study sessions, reflecting her dedication to their academic success. Vivian's warm personality and infectious laugh made her a beloved figure among students and colleagues alike. Vivian was married to Robert Severn, a 45-year-old businessman who owned a chain of laundromats called Clean Spin. The laundromats were popular among local students, adding a touch of familiarity to Robert's otherwise reserved and private demeanor. Despite their 15-year marriage, which had many happy moments, their relationship had recently become strained. Rumors of Vivian's infidelities had surfaced, creating a backdrop of tension and mistrust. In addition to her role as a professor, Vivian was an avid hiker and an active member of the Fort Collins Book Club. Her life was filled with vibrant activities and a wide circle of friends. She was also working on a significant project, a 700-page book titled From Brightest Head to Lehman, Interwar Literature's Role in Historical Erotic Fiction. Her dedication to this project was a testament to her love for teaching and research. In the days leading up to her death, Vivian was busy grading final papers and preparing for the summer semester, all while finishing her book. She was planning a hiking trip with friends to celebrate the end of the school year. Her colleagues noticed her excitement and energy as she looked forward to the break. Vivian's recent posts on Facebook and Instagram about a new book and a hiking trip reflected her joyful anticipation. However, beneath the surface of her seemingly perfect life were tensions and secrets that would lead to a tragic end. Her story serves as a stark reminder of how jealousy and obsession can shatter even the most seemingly perfect lives. On the morning of May 15, 2019, the sun rose over Fort Collins, casting a warm glow on the college campus. At around 7:30 a.m., Hank Murphy, a janitor at the college, began his routine cleaning rounds. Hank was a familiar and friendly face on campus, known for his dedication to maintaining the building's cleanliness. As he entered the English department, he noticed that Dr. Vivian Severn's office door was slightly ajar, a rare occurrence, as Vivian was meticulous about locking her door. Curious and concerned, Hank knocked gently but received no response. He pushed the door open and was met with a sight that would haunt him forever. Vivian was slumped over her desk, her body motionless, with 2 visible gunshot wounds. Blood had pooled around her papers and books, some stained with the blood. The room was eerily silent. Hank's heart raced as he took in the scene. He stumbled backward, nearly dropping his cleaning supplies. After a moment of shock, he regained his composure and rushed to the nearest phone to call campus security. His hands trembled as he dialed, his voice shaking as he reported the grim discovery. The campus security officer on duty immediately dispatched a team to Dr. Severn's office and called the local police. Within minutes, the wail of sirens approached the campus. When the police arrived, they found Hank sitting on a bench outside the building, his face pale and his eyes wide with shock. The lead investigator approached him, noting his distress. Hank recounted his discovery, his voice still shaking, and described finding Vivian slumped over her desk and how he had immediately called for help. The news of Dr. Severn's death spread quickly across the campus. Students and faculty were in shock, unable to comprehend the tragedy that had befallen their beloved professor. Local news stations picked up the story, briefly noting her death on the nightly newscast. The discovery of Vivian's body marked the beginning of a complex investigation that would uncover dark secrets and lead to an unexpected conclusion. Detective Sarah Lynn Bryant, known for her keen eye and calm demeanor, led the investigation. The scene at Dr. Vivian Severn's office was shocking. There were blood stains on her desk and papers scattered everywhere, creating a chaotic mix of a crime scene and a busy professor's office. The first task for the police was to secure the area, ensuring that no one could enter or leave. They carefully photographed everything before touching anything. Detective Bryant and her team began their search for clues. They found 2 bullet casings from a small-caliber handgun near Vivian's desk. The trajectory of the shots suggested that the killer was standing close to Vivian when she was shot. Investigators also collected items that might be useful for evidence, including Vivian's computer, her cell phone, and several personal items from her desk. Forensic experts were called in to examine the bloodstains and other physical evidence. Samples were taken for analysis at the lab, and the police dusted for fingerprints, looking for any that didn't belong to Vivian or the janitor who found her. As the investigation continued inside, other officers began interviewing people outside the building. They spoke with students, faculty, and staff to piece together Vivian's last moments. Many people were shocked and confused, unable to believe that such a respected professor could be the victim of such a violent crime. Detective Bryant also reviewed security camera footage from around the campus, hoping to spot anyone suspicious entering or leaving the building around the time of the murder. The footage showed some people entering and exiting, but nothing immediately suspicious. The police knew they had a tough case ahead. Vivian was well-liked, but the rumors about her personal life meant there could be many potential suspects. Detective Bryant and her team prepared to dig deeper into Vivian's life, her relationships, and her secrets. They hoped that by understanding more about her, they could find the person responsible for her death. As the sun set over Fort Collins, the police wrapped up their initial investigation at the crime scene. They had gathered a lot of information, but many questions remained. The investigation was just beginning, and Detective Bryant knew they had a long road ahead to find justice for Dr. Vivian Severn. The investigation quickly turned to Vivian Severn's husband, Robert Severn, as the primary suspect. Robert, 45, was a successful businessman who owned the Clean Spin laundromats. Despite his professional success, Robert was known to be reserved and had exhibited increasing jealousy and obsession over rumors of Vivian's infidelities. This made him an immediate person of interest. On the evening of May 16, 2019, Robert was brought in for questioning at the Fort Collins police station. Detective Sarah Lynn Bryant led the interrogation. Robert appeared calm, but there was a tense air about him. The detective began by asking Robert about his relationship with Vivian. He admitted that their marriage had been strained due to the rumors about her affairs with students. Robert provided an alibi, stating that he was at home the night of Vivian's murder, working on financial reports for Clean Spin. However, when asked if anyone could confirm his alibi, Robert struggled to provide a solid witness, which raised more suspicions among the detectives. During the interrogation, Robert's demeanor shifted. He became defensive when the detectives pressed him about his whereabouts and his feelings regarding Vivian's alleged affairs. He repeatedly denied having any involvement in her death, but his evasive answers only made the detectives more suspicious. The police also looked into Robert's financial records and phone logs. They found several calls and texts between Robert and Vivian in the days leading up to her death, many of which were heated arguments about the rumors. This added to the detectives' theory that Robert's jealousy and obsession could have driven him to commit the crime. Detective Bryant and her team continued to press Robert for more information, hoping to find inconsistencies in his story. They also searched the Severn home for any evidence that might link Robert to the crime. They found a handgun that matched the caliber of the bullets used in Vivian's murder. This was a significant piece of evidence, but it wasn't enough to make an arrest without further proof linking Robert to the actual shooting. While the police continued to investigate other leads, Robert remained a key suspect. His behavior, the strained marriage, and the discovery of the handgun all pointed toward him. However, the detectives knew they needed more concrete evidence to make an arrest. The investigation was far from over, and the police were determined to find justice for Dr. Vivian Severn. On May 18, 2019, a clear and sunny day in Fort Collins, a significant piece of evidence surfaced. Around 10 a.m., campus security found a flash drive in the parking lot near the English department. It had fallen out of a backpack left behind by one of Dr. Vivian Severn's students. The flash drive was quickly handed over to the police for investigation. Detective Bryant and her team examined the contents of the flash drive and were shocked to find dozens of videos of Dr. Vivian Severn engaging in sexual activities with students, both in her office and at her home. These videos confirmed the rumors about Vivian's infidelities and added a new layer to the case. The police analyzed the videos for clues about the murder, looking at timestamps, locations, and other details that might help identify who had access to the footage and who could have a motive for murder. The most recent video, recorded just hours before Vivian's death, showed her in a threesome with Tanner and Lainey Taylor, two of Vivian's top students. The police traced the origin of the videos and discovered that they had been made using hidden cameras in Vivian's office, as well as in her bedroom and bathroom at home. The detectives expanded their investigation to include anyone who might have had access to Vivian's office and home. As they delved deeper into the mystery surrounding Dr. Vivian Severn's murder, it became clear that the case was more complex than initially anticipated. The discovery of the videos on the flash drive had introduced a new layer of complexity, suggesting that multiple individuals could have had motives for the crime. Detective Sarah Len Bryant and her team began to scrutinize Vivian's close relationships and professional connections. They interviewed her colleagues, students, and anyone who had frequent access to her private spaces. It was crucial to establish a timeline and understand the dynamics of her interactions with others. One of the first steps was to revisit the backgrounds of Tanner and Lainey Taylor. The twins, who were 19 years old and among Vivian's most promising students, had been under significant scrutiny due to their involvement in the videos. Despite their nervous but cooperative demeanor during questioning, the police needed more to solidify their involvement or clear their names. Investigators followed up on Tanner and Lainey's alibis. Tanner had claimed to be studying at the library, while Lainey said she was at a friend's house. The police checked surveillance footage from the library and spoke to Tanner's friends to verify his whereabouts. Similarly, they contacted Lainey's friend to confirm her alibi. Both alibis proved difficult to corroborate, adding further suspicion. However, the lack of concrete evidence linking them directly to the murder weapon or the crime scene meant that Tanner and Lainey remained persons of interest, but not yet prime suspects. Simultaneously, detectives focused on Dr. Jonathan Brooks, a colleague of Vivian's with whom she had a noted professional rivalry. Dr. Brooks, a 50-year-old professor specializing in ancient Phoenician history, was known for his strict demeanor and high academic standards. Rumors of a romantic entanglement between him and Vivian, though unconfirmed, added another potential motive for the murder. Dr. Brooks was interrogated on May 20, 2019. During questioning, he maintained his calm demeanor but seemed slightly irritated by the situation. He admitted to a competitive relationship with Vivian but denied any romantic involvement. Dr. Brooks explained that their rivalry stemmed from academic competition rather than personal issues. He was asked about his whereabouts on the night of Vivian's murder and provided an alibi involving grading papers at home. However, the police found his alibi difficult to verify. Adding to the complexity, Dr. Brooks revealed a bizarre competition between himself and Vivian, where they allegedly competed to see who could engage in more student relationships. While this information did not directly connect him to the crime, it suggested possible animosity. Despite thorough searches of his office and home, including checking for any direct evidence or weapons, nothing concrete linked him to the murder. The investigation team continued to explore all possible angles. Detective Bryant's team analyzed the digital data from the flash drive, focusing on metadata and potential links to other suspects. The forensic analysis of the videos, fingerprints, and other physical evidence was painstaking but necessary to piece together the full story. On May 22, 2019, a significant breakthrough came with the discovery of new evidence that pointed directly to Robert Severn, Vivian's husband. An in-depth analysis of the flash drive revealed that Robert had accessed the videos an hour and a half before Vivian's murder. This timestamp was crucial as it placed him at the scene of the crime shortly before the murder occurred. The evidence painted a grim picture of Robert's emotional state and his potential motivations. Detective Bryant and her team reconstructed the timeline of events leading up to the murder. Robert's obsession with Vivian's infidelities had evidently reached a boiling point. He had discovered the extent of her sexual relationships with her students, leading to feelings of humiliation and betrayal. On the night of May 15th, Robert had likely gone to Vivian's office to confront her. The confrontation turned violent, resulting in him shooting her twice with the handgun he had taken from their home. The police gathered enough evidence to arrest Robert Severn. On the morning of May 23, 2019, they arrived at his home. Robert, appearing anxious but resigned, did not resist arrest. His arrest sent shockwaves through the community. The realization that Vivian's husband was the perpetrator was devastating for many who had suspected him but found it hard to accept. During the subsequent interrogation, Robert confessed to the murder. He detailed how Vivian's betrayals had driven him to a breaking point. His confession was comprehensive, leaving no doubt about his guilt. He admitted that the humiliation of learning about Vivian's multiple affairs with students had overwhelmed him, leading to the crime. The arrest and confession brought a mix of relief and pain to Vivian's family and the community. While there was relief in knowing that the perpetrator had been caught, the anguish of losing Vivian and the betrayal by someone so close to her remained raw. The community of Fort Collins, while grappling with the painful truth, rallied to support Vivian's family and honor her memory. As Robert awaited trial, the legal process began to unfold. The trial, delayed by the COVID-19 pandemic, finally commenced in January 2022 at the Larimer County Courthouse in Fort Collins. The courtroom was filled with media, family members, and locals eager to follow the proceedings. District Attorney Tabitha Quasimodo, known for her meticulous and determined approach, led the prosecution. Quasimodo presented a compelling case against Robert, detailing his motive, opportunity, and the digital evidence linking him to Vivian's murder. The prosecution highlighted Robert's jealousy and obsession with Vivian's infidelities as key factors driving him to commit the crime. Witnesses included detectives who had worked on the case and experts who explained the significance of the flash drive's metadata. On the defense side, Robert's attorney, Lisa Martin, a sharp and experienced lawyer, argued that Robert had been under immense emotional stress and had not acted with premeditation. She sought to cast doubt on the reliability of the digital evidence and suggested that someone else might have had a motive and opportunity to commit the murder. The trial was intense, with both sides presenting their arguments and evidence. Ultimately, the case against Robert Severn was strong, with his confession and the substantial digital evidence forming a compelling narrative of guilt. The court's focus was on determining the extent of Robert's culpability and delivering justice for Dr. Vivian Severn. As the trial progressed, the impact of the case on the community and Vivian's family remained palpable. The pain of her loss and the shock of the betrayal were deeply felt. The community's support for Vivian's family was unwavering, and her legacy as a dedicated professor and beloved member of Fort Collins continued to be honored. The trial concluded with Robert Severn being found guilty of the murder of his wife, Dr. Vivian Severn. The verdict brought a sense of closure to the case, but the scars left by the tragedy would take time to heal. The community, still reeling from the events, began the process of moving forward, cherishing the memory of Vivian and reflecting on the profound impact she had on those around her. The story of Dr. Vivian Severn's tragic end serves as a poignant reminder of how jealousy and obsession can lead to devastating consequences. Her life, marked by dedication and passion, was overshadowed by a dark turn of events, ultimately leading to a tragic and senseless loss. As the community of Fort Collins continued to heal, they held onto the memory of Vivian, celebrating her contributions and the positive impact she had on so many lives.